Hi, Will. Hi,
Hi,
Will.
Rita. You shouldn't be unmuted. Sorry.
Hello, all the same.
You're just below quorum right now.
3 more people.
All right, we're good to start, Russell.
Great. All right, so welcome everybody to the December full board meeting of Community Board 8. And we are going to start off with the public session. So just a reminder to folks that members of the public have 2 minutes to speak during the public session. You need to have signed up to do so. You have until 6:45 to sign up to speak in the public session. You sign up online where you sign in to join the meeting. There's a box to check to do it. So with that, I will turn it over to Will to talk a little bit more about how the process works. Will, you're muted.
Cool. Thank you, Russell. Welcome, everyone. If you have signed up for the public session, you can help us out by, when your name is called, going to the reactions icon and pressing the raise hand button so your name can jump to the top of the list. Press the button that says raise hand. Do not press the thumbs up or the wave. Those will disappear. Only press it once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you're calling in from the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute. Whenever you're called on and whenever we unmute you, look for a button to confirm unmuting on your screen. At that point, your 2-minute timer will start. You'll see the 2 minutes on the screen. And then once you run out of your 2 minutes, there will be an audible sound that will cancel out anything you're about to say. So we just encourage you to wrap up in that 2-minute time. And so with that, Russell, we can start the public session.
Thank you. One last thing is if you, when we call on you, just before starting your remarks, if you could just say where you live, it's just helpful because we like to track, whether people are living in the district or live elsewhere. It's just helpful for us in terms of, listening to everybody. So with that, we are going to start off with Evelyn David.
Actually, we have Councilmember Julie Menon here. I understand.
Yeah, let's start with Councilmember Menon.
And then I also see Councilmember Powers. So we will start with both of them.
Very good.
Oh, great. Russell, thank you so much. Hello, CB8. First of all, I want to wish everyone a happy and a healthy holiday and happy new year. I have a few updates that I wanted to update everyone on, and it's great to see my colleague, Councilmember Powers, on as well. So the first issue is I wanted to mention that I recently introduced a bill on healthcare pricing transparency. It's actually called the Healthcare Accountability and Consumer Protection Act. And what this bill will do is it will mandate that every single hospital in New York City will need to disclose their price for every single medical procedure. Because right now there is literally no other industry as a consumer where you have no idea what you're going to be charged, let alone at your most vulnerable time when you go into a hospital. So for example, a woman giving birth can be charged $55,000 at Montefiore or $12,000 at another New York City hospital or anywhere in between. So this will be the first healthcare accountability office in the country. We would be the first city to mandate that hospitals disclose the pricing, and I look forward to updating the board about it. We've got 34 council members have signed on as co-sponsors, so we have right now a supermajority of support, so I'm really happy to be able to announce that. Secondly, Roosevelt Island. I wanted to mention we had a great event on Roosevelt Island on the bridge the other day. I want to thank Paul and Lynn for their incredible advocacy. They joined me as we announced this new covering on the bike lane. This is outstanding. I think it's going to make an enormous difference. I was on it. I tried it out on the bike. It's fantastic. And I know people have pushed for this for many years. So I'm really happy we were able to deliver this win in terms of making it much safer. I wanted to also update on rat mitigation. So I know I've spoken to the board about this before, but I really want to talk about the success we're having on rat mitigation. We took the extraordinary step of I am funding extermination service through Wildcat. And we saw a 90% reduction on 86th Street, 90%. It's incredible. So if you've been on 86th Street recently, what we're doing in terms of the burrows and the tree pits is making an enormous difference. We're now going block by block. Anyone who contacts us who has rat issues on the block, we send our exterminator there. So please keep contacting us and we will send the exterminator to your block. And then the last update is I just want to talk about the, which I know the board is voting on tonight, is the Link NYC and 5G kiosk. So I've received a lot of concern, a lot of emails, a lot of calls on this issue. I want to let you know that we met with the Mayor's Office of Technology and Innovation to discuss the siting. In my district, we have 3 of the 18 locations. What the OTI, the Mayor's Office of Technology, has said is they will not remove them based on radio frequency emission concerns if they are FCC compliant. But they said they will remove them if there are, and I just want to give the examples they gave us, accessibility on the sidewalk, impact of outdoor dining sheds, impact to bus shelters, and other conditions on a specific block. So those were the criteria that OTI told us that if people advocated for, they were willing to reconsider. So I just wanted to get that. I know that the resolution talks about a moratorium, but I wanted to at least get that information to the board. And I know I'll be working with my colleague, Councilmember Powers, on that. And so just wanted to give you all the update on that. Thank you and happy holidays again, everyone.
Thank you very much. Let's go next to Councilmember Powers.
Thank you. Nice to see everyone and happy holidays. Hope everyone's safe and healthy. And thank you to Councilmember Menon. I lost her on my screen, but nice to see you. I wanted to just jump in. I'm going to do a couple updates, but I'll just pick up where Councilmember Menon left off with the current proposals for the Link 5G programs. I think as folks know from the hearing, and also I've done in the media a little bit on this, I have also expressed concerns with the current proposal for where they're going. I have in my district a number in Carnegie Hill and also a couple, 3, I think, along Madison Avenue. And I see Matt Power from Madison Avenue bid. We actually did a great walkthrough today of his area, and including looking at where they would propose. And I think they are just gigantic and they are huge, and they definitely, and Matt's area and Carnegie Hill definitely stick out like a sore thumb. And I think we've asked them to find maybe better harmony between the neighborhood and what they're trying to do in terms of expanding and modernizing there. I've heard from a lot of constituents along there about it. And obviously, I think there's over 150 people at the committee board meeting the other night. So I think there's lots of concerns here. This is a historic district. We know they're going to have to go to the Landmarks Preservation Commission. They're going to have to weigh in as well. But wanted to echo the concerns that many folks have raised at CB8 about the placement and the siting of these as well. So we will be following up on those concerns as well, but wanted to just get on and repeat and restate my concerns about the exact proposal and just the whole scale of the towers that they're putting out there right now. Two other quick things. We're doing we do this every year, a toy drive with a group called Room to Grow, which is located in my district and now it's expanded into the Bronx. Jesse from my office is going to include a link to their toy drive in here as well, but certainly always ask folks who are able to. This is a great group that helps families in need. And obviously the holidays can be extremely tough for a lot of those families. So we will circulate and send around the link, but certainly would appreciate anyone's help and assistance with that toy drive, because it goes to a great cause every year. We drop them off and you can see how important it is to those families. We're also with the Carnegie Hill Neighbors doing a coat drive. New and lightly used coats are being collected for donation. They're going to go to a senior center in my district. We're trying to collect 175 coats. You can bring them to the Carnegie Hill Neighbors office on Madison Avenue. You can reach out to my office if you'd like to contribute to that as well. And always thank you to Carnegie Hill Neighbors for their partnership. And the last two things I'd say is we have a new announcement on Fifth Avenue for folks that it's a little bit west of you guys, but we have opened up Fifth Avenue every Sunday during the holiday, a couple Sundays during the holidays and around Rockefeller Center. Really encourage people to go there. There's a lot happening there, retail, walking around, the trade. But if you get sick and tired of the crowds during the holidays, this is a good time to go visit, because the Sundays they've really opened it up. This was a big effort for myself and the borough president. I want to make sure people go in and enjoy it. And then lastly, we have a hearing on a bill of mine tomorrow. It's legislation to move towards zero emission vehicles for the city fleet, to reduce emissions, improve air quality, reduce spending in the long term, and to set up obviously a strong precedent for our city. We have a bill to do that, and we're going to get a hearing on it tomorrow at the city council. I believe it's at 12:30. If anybody wants to join us or want to watch along, you can come to City Hall for the hearing, or alternatively, you can watch along at home. So I will leave it at that, but thank you guys always for everything you do. And happy holidays, happy new year, and hope everyone's safe and healthy.
Thank you very much. All right, let's proceed with the public session. And I'll just also say at the outset here that if I mispronounce your name, I apologize in advance. And again, just a reminder at the start of your remarks, just please let us know where you're from, also where you live. And with that, let's go to Evelyn David.
As I said earlier, you'll see a clock appear on the screen, and a sound will be heard whenever you've hit the end of your time. But Evelyn, you can go ahead and unmute. It's *6 to unmute. Your time has started.
Okay. Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for calling me fast. Council people, Powers and Menon, thank you very much for everything. Very fast question, which doesn't have to be answered during my time. Why the towers, why aren't you putting on top of buildings? Hello? Maybe they wouldn't have to be so tall, number one, or stick them in the park, around the perimeter of the park. I don't know. I mean, somebody needs to use their brain about this. In the country, there are towers, these gigantic towers, okay, that stick up, but people don't put them in people's backyards. And they certainly don't put them on the main street, okay? This is insane. Okay, having said that, those are questions. Very quickly, to the Transportation Committee, the issue of snow blowers, and I know you haven't made any comments about this to... not legally, but actually in the works. Snow plows, I know a friend works in the garages. He said there are snow plows that are already facing to the left. They already have some plows that face to the left. It would be very easy for them to put snow blowers on top of those trucks, to put the snow and the median, to go up and down Park Avenue. That's an easy thing. I'm going to leave it there. If you guys think about this, if you had a car that got shoveled under with snow every single time you turned around, you might be a little bit more able to think about, you'd think about this in another way. Okay. To congestion pricing, adamantly opposed to the whole thing MTA is doing in their solution and pricing. Bringing on the issue of parking passes, I am thinking if we are residents of New York City, we live here, we vote here, why does it matter where our car is registered? If it's registered on the moon, it doesn't make any difference. It is our car. We are parking it on the New York City streets, and we are having the problem that everybody's having. Okay, so somebody was...
All right, thank you. And just a reminder again, folks, please do let us know where you live. You can just tell us the neighborhood. I know Evelyn lives in the Upper East Side, but just at the start of your remarks. And next we'll go to Liz Daly.
Thank you. Good evening, Russell and members of Community Board 8. My name is Elizabeth Rose Daly. I am the Community Relations Manager.
This is really hard to hear. I'm just pausing you for a second. You may want to get closer to your microphone.
Okay. Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay, let me start again. Hi, I'm Liz Daly. I'm the Community Relations Manager for the Frick Collection, and I would like to invite you to visit Frick Madison this holiday season. We have two special exhibitions on view. One is the AVR Drawings, a promised gift of drawings and pastels, which includes works by artists such as Edgar Degas, Fragonard, John Singer Sargent, and Elizabeth Vigée-Lebrun. It's on view through February 26th. The second show is a special installation by the Danish Icelandic artist Olafur Eliasson, his color experiment number 109, which he created in response to a work by Monet, Vertaille in Winter, which is one of the few impressionist works at the Frick. So this show will be up until January 22nd. And if you'd like to do a deeper dive into our collection, you'll find much more information on our website, www.frick.org. Where you can also still find the very popular Cocktails with the Curator video series. Frick Madison is located on Madison Avenue at 75th Street. We're open Thursdays through Sundays from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And while you're there, you can also visit the recently opened Sister Yard, where you can get coffee and pastries. And I'd also like to make sure that you know that every week, Pay What You Wish admission is offered on Thursdays from 4 to 6 p.m. And I also want to tell you that that December 16th is the anniversary of the opening of the museum in 1935. And to mark the occasion, this Friday, December 16th, we're offering Pay What You Wish admission from 2 to 6 p.m. And if you'd like more information, please visit our website. And I hope to see you all at Frick Madison, and I wish you all very happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Karan Johar, and just remind you, let us know where you live at the start of your remarks.
Karan, we cannot see you in the chat, so if you're here, please go to the reactions icon and press the raise hand, or go to the chat and let me know who you are. I'm not seeing you. And also, if you have your hand up, that's not how we take the names. You will be taken whenever your name is called. So if you sign up for the public session, raise your hand when your name is called, please. I'm not seeing.
Okay, Rachel Schroeder.
Rachel, you can go ahead and hit unmute.
Hi, I'm here. I am based in Chelsea. I'm here from Nara Rosler Gallery, and I'm just here to voice my support for the Raoul Morel sculpture for the American Society and the Fund for Park Avenue. Just stating that this is a project that we've been developing at the invitation of American Society, but not with their financial support. It's being supported by the artists in the gallery. And we have designed a sculpture that was approved by the Parks Department, the Fund for Park Avenue, and the MTA, all of whom have extensive experience with projects of this scale. And we would just love to have the support of the community as well. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Next is Timothy Harrell.
Timothy, if you're here, please use the reactions icon and find the raise hand button so we can see you, or chat me if you're here under a different name. But I'm not seeing Timothy here.
Okay, after Timothy is Phyllis Weisberg.
I do see Phyllis. Phyllis, you can go ahead and unmute.
My name is Phyllis Weisberg with the law firm of Armstrong Teasdale. We represent 10 East 70th Street. We're here in support of the resolution regarding the no parking zone in front of 828 Madison, the private club. This was the Transportation Committee has a resolution to support this, and this is a companion to the resolution that the full board enacted in October as a result of appearances before the Street Life Committee, and as part of the stipulated conditions between the applicant and the community. We urge you to support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Milton Strong.
Oh, I just wanted to reiterate what Phyllis said. I live at 10 East 70th Street. I'm actually president of Building to Building abuts the 848 Madison, and we are supportive of their proposal on the traffic lane on the north side of Madison. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next, let's go to Matt Bauer, please.
Good evening, everyone. Matt Bauer, from the director of the Madison Avenue Business Improvement District, and happy holidays. Just want to say first, thanks again to Councilmember Powers, who visited our community today. He's been a terrific advocate for all things economic development and Upper East Side. So just want to say thank you for him, to him. Also, we had a great meeting this morning with the 19th precinct. And just want to say also thanks to the Inspector Eager and the entire team at the 19th for all they're doing to keep Madison Avenue safe. Also a thanks to our Transportation Committee here at Community Board 8. I very much support and appreciate the resolution that was made regarding the Link 5G towers that are proposed for our district. There are 3 proposed in the Madison Avenue bid. They really don't belong in historic districts, nor do they, nor should the advertising screens be placed right in front of stores that are not allowed to do it because of the rules of the zoning resolution historic district. As always, like to remind all of you about new store openings on Madison. We actually have had 4 jewelry store openings since our last meeting. Ring Concierge at 946 Madison, Allison Lou. They were all in the 70s, by the way. Allison Lou at 994 Madison, Ivor Jewelry at 29 73rd Street, and a pop-up store called Marlowe Laws at 971 Madison Avenue. And want to just once again encourage those of you come shop on Madison Avenue, support these local businesses. It means a lot to them. And finally, I hope you all take a look at the architecture displays that are up and down Madison Avenue, designed by the School of Visual Arts. They're unique takes on dog houses. Lots of fun. So once again, happy holidays. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Emil Kleinhaus.
Hello, my name is Emil Kleinhaus. I'm a resident of 1105 Park Avenue in the district. I'm here to ask the community board and our local elected officials to do everything in their power to urge the mayor's office and OTI not to install the 32-foot 5G towers in residential areas on the Upper East Side, and in particular at 1105 Park Avenue. My concerns are aesthetic, but they're also broader. In terms of aesthetics, it would be quite an understatement to say that these massive towers are out of context next to buildings designed by architects like Rosario Candela, Emery Roth, and other leading architects of the 20th century. At my building in particular, the site proposed for the 5G tower is wholly inappropriate. The tower would be erected on Park Avenue in front of the building. The location is way too close, not only to people's windows, but also to the building entrance. If the tower will be 10 feet away from the building, as we've been told, it won't be much more than 10 feet away. Putting aside aesthetics, I do not want my 2 young children walking out their front door to a flashing screen and a Wi-Fi station where people may gather, linger, and make noise at any hour of the day or night. That may make sense in a commercial setting that has stores, restaurants, and foot traffic, but not in a quiet residential area. Councilmember Powers, I heard you say you did a walkthrough of the proposed sites on Madison Avenue. Please come do a walkthrough of the proposed sites in the residential areas as well and see how badly placed these proposed sites are. It's hard to imagine worse placement. I know people in Carnegie Hill are looking to you and to the community board for help on this issue. Councilmember Menon, I heard what you said about the factors OTI will consider. They seem much too narrow, and I hope you and the community board will urge a much broader reconsideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Joe Formica.
I'm here tonight on behalf of my husband, Joe Formica. My name's Chelsea. I'm here asking Community Board 8 to include in their moratorium that the 5G pole installed outside of 520 East 90th Street be removed. As you can see behind me, I'm not sure if you can see, I lost my camera. Yeah, you can see right there. As you can see behind me, there's a 5G tower as part of the city's pole top program right outside my 6-month-old son's window. This pole is less than 10 feet from our building, and because of the distance, we were supposed to receive an opportunity to have a community board discussion prior to its installation. Surely it would have received pushback and a more suitable location would have been chosen. Last week, we heard a ton of backlash to the Link NYC polls, which led to a proposed moratorium by the community board. We were not given this opportunity, even though it was contractually part of the city's franchise agreement to do so. OTI and the city are not overseeing site selection, and they are passing the responsibility to the franchisee, even though these are city-owned poles. Last week, OTI and Mr. Sickoff admitted the pole was less than 10 feet from the building, but did not give any insight into why no notice was given and or what will be done to remediate that. In addition to the moratorium, this specific pole at 520 East 90th Street needs to be removed because proper protocol was not followed to install this pole. I'd like to thank the community board for pursuing this moratorium and pole removal as we seek answers and more logical solutions for these programs that were so irresponsibly run. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ronald Kurloff.
Ronald, if you're here, look for the reactions icon at the bottom of your screen and find the raise hand button. Or you can chat me if you're here under a different name. I'm not seeing Ronald.
Okay, let's go next to Joseph Hodkin.
Joseph, same thing to you. If you're here, I'm not seeing you. And so please go to the reactions icon at the bottom of your screen and press the raise hand button or chat me.
Okay, and after that is going to be Sue Moss.
I do see Sue.
Hi, my name is Sue Moss. I'm one of the local Democratic district leaders from the 73rd AD. I also live at 1050 Fifth Avenue. 40% of our neighbors do not have access to internet. So why are we using the limited New York City resources to build these poles in neighborhoods where this is not a problem? When this program was initially brought out, it was conceptualized that most of the Upper East Side towers would be above 86th Street, where, according to the map produced by the mayor's office, there are an excessive number of people without access to free internet. That is not the problem in our area. Now, with regard to the historic district, there are rules. The Landmark Preservation Commission Title 63 presents rules that under Section 223 C24 has a specific height requirement for public communication structures that can be instituted in the historic district. Those poles are not to be above 122.9 inches high. Obviously, this is a violation of the rule. Additionally, there aren't to be more than one public communication structure in a particular area. For 1050 Fifth Avenue, there is also a bus public communication structure which sets forth times. So there are multiple violations under the Landmark Preservation Committee. And Keith, we really need your help because this is a huge problem and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Next, let's go to Cleve Langton.
As before, Cleve, if you're here, go to the reactions icon at the bottom of your screen and press the raise hand button, or chat me if you're actually here. I'm not seeing Cleve, so who's next on our list?
Elizabeth Fox.
Elizabeth, go ahead and unmute.
Hi, sorry about that. I'm Elizabeth Fox and I'm at 1115 Fifth Avenue. And I am also echoing what Sue just said, as well as the preceding speakers, to express my complete dismay at the 5G kiosk, beginning with the comments that were made at the transportation building are perhaps the most egregious to me. The gentleman from City Bridge repeatedly stated that, and in fact emphasized that the proposed tower locations were chosen based on instructions from the cellular providers. It is egregious that a for-profit company like Verizon would determine the construction and location of these towers, particularly in historic and residential neighborhoods. The fact is that the individuals who live in these homes, send their children to schools in these neighborhoods, and paid taxes had very little input and buy-in. And the idea that these structures could not be put on buildings or on existing light poles is simply overlooked because it's of the interest of generating revenue for City Bridge. Second, I am speaking as a parent to 3 young children, and I have obviously grave concerns around the health and the screens, but more importantly, around the privacy risks that this poses to children. The ACLU and the Electronic Frontier Foundation have pointed out that these kiosks function as unprecedented surveillance and data gathering machines. Link NYC's privacy policies are described as ambiguous at best. Because these kiosks gather data like users' location, their browsing history, us parents have to take these concerns a step further. And how do we know that there won't be a hack that could make children's locations apparent to very dangerous people?
Thank you. Next is James Bronstein.
Hi all, thank you. So I'm on the board of 15 East 91st Street. I'm going to re-echo what's already been said about the NYC Link kiosks. I think there are a number of problems with these from their chosen locations, but also the safety concerns. The reality is, I've seen this before. I saw it when I lived on the west side. The reality is you get a lot of folks that stop and charge their devices, look at inappropriate material. They present screen issues outside the buildings. The area in the low 90s on Madison is surrounded by 6 to 8 schools. So I've got safety concerns as the parent of 2 small children. Also the health concerns of the various broadband radiation. And as was just mentioned, concerns over the safety and data privacy. So I'm a data privacy executive with a large technology company. These are not secure networks. They are very easily penetratable. They pick up any device and you can access devices that are shared across them. This is just not a benefit for the neighborhood, nor do I think there's a need in the neighborhood given the the average housing cost, et cetera, in the Carnegie Hill neighborhood. I just can't see, that this is the area that the city should be spending money on to expand the broadband reach. It should be done in in neighborhoods with greater need. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Yvette Cohen.
I don't see an Yvette Cohen, but there's an Yvette that seems to have their hand up, and maybe they are that person. Yvette, if that's you, you can.
Hi. Yeah,
Is that you?
it's me. Hello.
Gotcha.
Yeah, hi. Yvette Pomerantz, actually. Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to say my primary concern with all of this, apart from the obvious, that I'm in Carnegie Hill, where there are certainly landmark considerations. There is obviously traffic, street traffic. This is a residential area with children and elderly people. But apart from all of that, what is bothering me the most about this entire situation is the lack of transparency from the companies involved. In the last community board meeting that we had, after 2 hours, somebody asked about contracts. Well, those contracts are already signed. They were also asked, City Bridge was also asked, is Google involved? Well, the answer was no, but in fact, that is inaccurate. Alphabet, Google is directly behind all of this through a consortium of companies. So the question is, why are we not discussing this as an issue of nothing more than advertising revenue and data collection and potentially surveillance? We can't prove the health considerations, though there's a lot of information about it, but that won't get us very far in this argument, it seems. And there are other technological ways in which to provide Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi, and as well as the support for charging, etc. So there is no reason to have these towers in this neighborhood or any other in Manhattan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Yvette does live here on the Upper East Side. Let's next go to Ellen Osuna.
Ellen, it's *9 to unmute from the phone. Sorry, it's *6. That was the wrong word. Number. Just hit star and 6, Ellen. There you go. You have 2 minutes starting now.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ellen Osuna, one of the founding members of New Yorkers for Wired Tech. I live in Brooklyn, also Eastern Queens, and I love Manhattan. I wanted to speak briefly in support of the moratorium on the Link 5G poles pending an honest assessment of health and aesthetic impacts. But in that concept of a review of health impacts, it needs to be emphasized that industry funds studies and puts out reassuring sounding information that is meant to obscure, not inform. Opposition to these poles is based not on concern, but on a large and growing body of science that shows harmful biological effects of pulsed modulated microwave radiation at levels far below what's considered safe by the FCC. And the distrust of industry-funded propaganda is based on the fact that they gaslight and lie. Any article, industry, politician, or publication that cites the FCC exposure limit as if it means anything reassuring is either ignorant or intentionally deceiving. I encourage everyone to read the many links about industry influence in science on the website mdsafetech.org, mdsafetech.org. The page is Industry Influence in Science. If you put those words into any search engine, you'll find that page. These polls need to be evaluated for safety, but they need to be evaluated honestly and to not have it be a futile exercise in industry-sponsored gaslighting. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, let's go to Julie Martin. And just if you could start off by telling us where you live, please.
Julie, you can hit unmute. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry. Okay. Thank you. Yes, I live in the Greenwich Village, but I'm a lifelong born in New York, and the Upper East Side is an iconic part of me and everyone else and the world. So I just wanted to also add my support to the Transportation Committee and the community who were present and spoke at that meeting protesting the 18 polls. I just want to mention the city says that they will not revoke anything that is based on RF concerns beyond the FCC guidelines, except we cannot even be sure that they are compliant within these guidelines. For instance, I've been requesting their audit reports for the past couple of years, and all I get are extensions in time. And I think local representatives, any local representatives that have anything to do with these rollouts, as well as the public, should be provided with these types of reports. And as well as the business plans of these structures, we still do not know exactly what kind of data streams they are collecting from the passersby. An ACLU privacy expert, Daniel Schwartz, was quoted in a recent article in Vice magazine saying we're in 2022 and we still don't know exactly what the software does on Link New York City kiosks. Also, what makes me nervous is that you do not know exactly how many of these polls there will ultimately be. You only get notice of these polls because they are on news sites. Or OTI has stated that they do not need to inform you for those to be installed on old kiosk or payphone sites. Also, they've stated in their presentation that the only restriction is that there be one per block. So that begs the question, what is their ultimate vision for the city? And I think the city and the Upper East Side, all of us need to have a say in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, let's go to Ira Zecker.
Ira, you can go ahead and unmute.
Good evening. My name is Ira Zecker. I'm the president of the board at 1050 Fifth Avenue. And I reiterate everything that's been said here regarding an objection to this, the towers, the 5G towers, and we support the moratorium that you're focused on. With respect to 1050 specifically, the tower is scheduled to be installed 10 feet from the front door of our building. And I would like to point out to the committee that Fifth Avenue has a border with the west side, which is the east side of the park. And we would support moving the tower to the west side of Fifth Avenue if the towers have to be built, not in front of anybody's window. We note that the tower on 88th Street by the museum is being installed across on the Fifth Avenue, on the west side of Fifth Avenue on the park side. And the tower at 62nd Street is also on the park side. So we scratch our head and say, why would the tower on 86th Street be on the east side of Fifth Avenue, right in front of a residential building, when it could easily be moved to the west side at the park, on the park promenade? We thank you for your attention. I want to wish everybody a happy holiday, and we hope you'll take this to heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is Andrew Fine.
Hi, Russell. Thank you. Thank you to the board as well. I'm from 84th Street between 3rd and Lex. I'm in Julie Menon's district, and I will be in Keith Powers' district sometime soon. I want to thank everybody who came out to this Saturday afternoon's clean team. Volunteers from the East 86th Street Association included Julie Menon, Assembly Member-elect Boris, Assembly Member Rebecca Seawright, and potentially my new personal hero, Sanitation Commissioner Jessica Tisch, as well as the Wildcats, Ace Cleaners, and very generous feeding by Chick-fil-A. I also want to thank Julie for her rat mitigation program, which has reduced the number of boroughs on East 86th Street between 2nd Avenue and Lexington Avenue from approximately 100 to about 6 or 7. And I know she's still working on it, and you should definitely reach out to her office if you have an active rat infestation. I wanted to speak quickly against the 5G towers, as they are obviously ugly. We have 5G on the Upper East Side and Carnegie Hill. These towers are unnecessary, and they're yet another private taking of public space for advertising and revenue. Much like the car share program that we discussed this month, where the DOT blindsided us and just told us what they were doing and then asked for us to approve of it. Finally, I'd like to also mention that I am personally against congestion pricing, as it's foolhardy and it is a sham. And finally, I'd like to speak out against Intro 632, which prohibits criminal background checks on the parts of co-ops, condos, and rental management companies. So a criminal can move right next door to you and you won't know it. Thank you. I made it inside of 2 minutes. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Next, let's go to Odette Wilkins. If you could just let us know where you live.
Yes, hello. I'm Odette Wilkins, and I'm President and General Counsel of Wired Broadband. We are based in Forest Hills, New York. And I would like to voice my support also for the moratorium on the 5G deployment on the Upper East Side and in favor of the resolution. I just want to say that the OTI was trying to talk about a gap in service as if that justified the 5G deployment in the Upper East Side. It does not, because they have to prove a gap in service, and that the burden is on the telecom carriers to do that. They have not proved it. They admitted that there were no reports, and therefore there is no gap in service. The only way that a telecom carrier can force a telecommunications structure on a neighborhood is if there is a significant gap in service and they're using the least intrusive means possible. Here, they have shown no gap in service and they're using the most intrusive means possible by placing them in front of people's windows. We don't need wireless. We can use fiber optics, which is a far superior technology for capacity and the fastest service. And that goes underground. Actually, 5G depends on fiber optics. So whenever you see these poles, there's fiber optics running all the way up the poles. Why not extend the fiber optics a few feet or a few yards to the buildings? For stationary capacity, you don't need wireless. Fiber optics is far superior. And Tom Wheeler, former chair of the FCC, has called for a fiber first policy and wireless as a last resort. And he did that in testimony in front of Congress last March of 2011. I fully support the moratorium.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Lo Vandervalk.
Go ahead, Lo.
Yes, my name is Lo Vandervalk, and I represent Carnegie Hill neighbors. We are strongly opposed to the stationing of the 5G towers in our historic districts and in any residential district. And we are grateful for the Community Board 8 Transportation Committee and the excellent job they did at their hearing and the excellent resolution they have put together. And we urge approval of their resolution, which opposes the installation of these towers and other infrastructure, and also asks for a moratorium. We would like to, and all the reasons have been cited, and I don't want to go into it, but I do want to make one suggestion, and that is in looking at the whereases, I think one additional one needs to be added, and that is they have not demonstrated that the shape, size, and design of the towers they are being proposed are the least intrusive to accomplish their objectives, and I think we should hold them to that. Finally, I would like to say that we are all seeking more information, and after tonight's hearing, I think we need to have maybe other hearings or a town hall where the applicants are asked to return and to answer certain questions that are important to us. And I hope the community board might consider hosting such a thing, because they are the ideal conduit. And of course, we would want our elected officials to be present for that. So that's the extent of our comments, and thank you for the resolution, and please pass it, approve it tonight. It will be very good for the elected officials to support us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Stephanie Reckler.
Stephanie, you should be getting a prompt on your screen to unmute. Please follow that prompt. There you go. You are unmuted. You can go ahead and speak.
Stephanie?
She's unmuted.
We don't hear you, Stephanie. Now you're muted.
I muted her. Stephanie, you can try to fix your audio problems and we'll go back to other people and come back to you.
Okay, in the meanwhile, we will go to Alita Camp.
Go ahead, Alita.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, Russell. I just would like to say that in September, there was a resolution supporting a two-way bike lane around Central Park, and I regret my vote in favor of that. Just today, I walked through Central Park, and there were numerous bike riders on those paths, despite the signs that say, please dismount. I cannot imagine what it would take to cross the street when there are bikes going in both directions, when they don't stop at red lights and they don't stop for pedestrians. One guy told me today when I asked him nicely to dismount that he cared about safety, but did not care about following the rules. At least he cared about safety, but it doesn't say much for following the rules. And I'm really just concerned about what it will take for pedestrians to cross the streets with buses and tour buses and charter buses and school buses and cabs and cars and bikes and mini motorcycles, which I also saw riding on the sidewalk today, not just parking it, but actually riding on the sidewalk. So that's all I wanted to say, was that I do regret my vote in favor of that resolution and would not support, again, if I had the opportunity, a two-way bike lane around Fifth Avenue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Stephanie, if you want to try unmuting again, and also this is a chance for, before we move on from the public session, any of the folks that I called earlier who weren't here where I called you, if you can raise your hand, and that was Ronald Kurloff, Joseph Hodkin, Karan Johar, Cleve Langton, Timothy Harrell. Now is your chance if you still want to speak in the public session here.
If you just called your name and you're here, please raise your virtual hand or chat me so that I know that you're here and we'll unmute you. Stephanie, you can unmute if you have sorted out your sound problems. I don't believe that any of the above has happened. So Russell, if you would like to move on, I think that would be in order.
All right, let's move on then to the next item on the agenda, which is adoption of the agenda. So if there's a motion to do that, we will do it, and you can move to do that with a thumbs up and a second with a thumbs up. So I see Rebecca moves, and is there a second? Just looking for a thumbs up from a board member other than Rebecca. Peggy, good. Okay. All right, anyone opposed to adoption of the agenda? Very good. And we'll also adopt the prior meeting's minutes. So if there's a motion to do that, Rebecca, is there a second? Yep, great, thank you. Anyone opposed? No, very good. Okay, we will move now to the Manhattan Borough President's report. I don't think he's here. Is he going to be here later, Mina, or if not, you can go ahead.
Hi, good evening, Manhattan Community Board 8. I do just want to just kind of go off of where we're leaving off. Of course, with the 5G towers, office is very aware and also equally concerned with the placement of these towers. And as we have been in conversation with OTI, as well as the companies that are working alongside the city to implement these towers. And we're just asking that they work with the community, various organizations like Carnegie Hill Neighbors, as well as the community board, and ensuring that these locations are appropriate for the communities, as well as making sure that they're actually serving those that are in need of wireless services and do not have access to that on their own. And I do also just want to, we'll continue those conversations as well as with your local elected officials, and make sure that we are making sure that we are raising these concerns. And also, I did want to say that our community board applications have opened. So if you or anyone else is interested in applying to the board, please do so. And also, I do want to also alert everyone that we are having our upcoming capital funding applications. And that will open sometime in January. So I'll put the link, but if you have any schools in mind, especially outreach to schools. About 2 weeks ago, we had an informational about that in the process. But just so that everyone is aware, if you have a not-for-profit who's trying to do some outfitting or expand their services, that capital funding, our capital funding application will soon be available to you. In addition, I do want to thank the Parks and Waterfront Committee on passing the Million Trees Initiative resolution, which Borough President Mark Levine has pushed, and was something that he was very passionate about when he first took office, as well as alongside with his 4 other borough presidents. This is something that they are pushing that should be a citywide initiative, and something that they all agree upon to ensure that we're expanding green spaces, not only in Manhattan, but ensuring that these green spaces are equitable, in addition to making sure that all 5 boroughs have equity of green spaces available to them. So we hope that this also does pass full board. And also to just speak to our Parks and Waterfront Committee, thank you, Judy, thank you, Felice, in regards to just an ongoing issue that our office is also monitoring, which is the growing sinkhole between East 76th and East 77th Street and the East River Esplanade. This was something that was brought to our attention back in October, and we haven't seen any real movement in terms of that being addressed. And so our office, the Borough President did write to Commissioner Sue Donahue at the end of last month, just asking for that to be remedied. And I know your committee is waiting for feedback, so is our office. But this also does bring into question what I announced last month, which was the Borough President's push to create a waterfront management agency, that a completely new agency, a completely new city agency that will truly be accountable to what our waterfronts, remediation, as well as ensuring that we have the specialized expertise to be aware of what our long-term needs are in terms of when we are, hopefully not soon, but we do know climate change is here and is here to stay. But God forbid we experience another Superstorm Sandy. We need an agency that has the money, the funding, and also the expertise to deal with that internally, so that we know that Parks isn't only dealing with our playgrounds, our green spaces, in addition to our coastal resiliency and our remediation of that, but so that they can strictly be focused on our parks and our playgrounds and green spaces, and not having the added additional labor to deal with our coast and our waterfront, and making sure that that is being upgraded, but having the agency to do that solely. I did also, well, that kind of sums it up, but I did kind of just also want to uplift something that you may have heard about in the news, but that happened north and west of you. But there is a fire that occurred at in Hamilton Heights, 617 West 141st Street, and our office, along with the local council member, Councilmember Shauna Abreu, we are collecting donations for that fire that happened about 2.5 weeks ago, over the weekend, it's completely fully vacated the building where families lived. So of course, we know this is the holiday season. So if you would like to provide any donations for the families, unfortunately, there's been some building issues, but there's been some delays in families trying to get into the building and get their items. So we are just asking for for donations such as, coats, etc. If you all would like to donate.
You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry. So we're actually accepting donations from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. and that is at PS 192, Jacob A. Shift School, and that is 300 West 138th Street. So thank you, everyone. I'll put my information in the chat, and we'll be continuing, of course, to monitor the 5G towers and continue advocacy on that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move now to the reports from the other elected officials. So if you are here to do that, go ahead and raise your hand and we will call on you in order, and you will each have 2 minutes, and we will start with Audrey Tannen.
Go ahead, Audrey.
Hello, thank you. Just two quick things. One is, and I know Brad Usher was at the Health Committee meeting a few weeks ago, and we wanted to make sure everyone on Community Board 8 and the public knows that Liz has already introduced legislation for what we know is a major community concern, which is the proliferation of a lot of cannabis shops, a lot of the smoke shops, which are now selling cannabis, marijuana related materials. And Liz has already introduced legislation that would allow the Office of Cannabis Management to actually enforce and shut down any illegal shops or any shops that are selling illegal cannabis that hasn't been licensed. So that should make for a more efficient and quick process in shutting some of these places down. Number two, in terms of the virtual meetings for community boards, Liz wants you all to know it has already been a topic of discussion in the Senate. The Senate really seems to be in favor of continuing some kind of hybrid approach to these meetings. She's pretty confident that that would get through the Senate, but honestly, that doesn't mean it's getting through all the players in Albany. So we encourage you to keep up the communication, particularly to the Assembly, to the governor, that you are interested in continuing. Again, the Senate is going for the hybrid, not the fully remote meetings. That's it. Happy holidays, healthy, happy, peaceful 2023. Thanks all.
Thank you. Next, let's go to George Damalis.
Hey, everybody. I'm filling in for Terrell tonight. So for those who don't know me, I'm George Damalis. I'm Senator Serrano's Chief of Staff. I'm going to keep this short. Most of you know the districts are changing a bit. So unfortunately, we're losing out on Roosevelt Island. So I'd just like to take this opportunity to say how much we enjoyed Roosevelt Island being in our district and how much we will miss it. But I know Audrey and Senator Krueger, it will be in good hands. And obviously Assemblymember Seawright is still there. So, everybody will be taken care of, but we will not be out of CB8 because we're picking up a little bit of Upper Yorkville. So you'll see myself or Terrell or somebody else from our office soon. I'll put my information in the chat for anybody who has any other questions, and just happy holidays to everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, let's go to Courtney.
Hi, I'm Courtney Pharisee, representing the Office of Assemblymember Rebecca Seawright. Assemblymember Seawright supports the Community Board 8 resolution tonight for a moratorium on the proposed 5G NYC towers. We sent a letter to Mayor Adams to demand a moratorium on the Link 5G NYC installation on the Upper East Side, and the mayor and city officials must take this seriously. OTI's actions in response are totally inadequate, and the community has been deprived of knowing how these sites are selected, what the health and environmental impacts of clusters of radio frequency radiation are. And Assemblymember Seawright was interviewed recently on a radio show to call more attention to the issue. We'll be sponsoring legislation similar to that of New Hampshire, which is one of the first states to examine the health outcomes of the expansion of the 5G network. Assemblymember Seawright is proposing a bill to study and establish a common distance for these towers. Sorry about that. A common distance for these towers to be located away from living people. So stay tuned. We welcome you to stop by our office at 1485 York Avenue for a holiday open house on Tuesday, December 20th from 4 to 5 p.m. We welcome the donation of new toys, books, and board games for the children of the New York Center for Children and the Stanley Isaac Center. Please consider our office a resource. We continue to hold our Thursday no-cost PPE giveaway and our no-cost housing legal clinic. And as we contend with the triple-demic, please remember to get your shots and boosters. We all must do our part to keep each other safe. So have a safe and happy holiday season. Thank you.
Thanks. Next, let's go to Kevin Jean-Baptiste.
Good evening, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Just turned on another Zoom. Apologies.
There's some background, yeah.
I just turned on another Zoom. Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin Jean-Baptiste from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. My report today is regarding an announcement that the District Attorney made this afternoon at the Hartley House in announcing a $9 million investment to mental health services and other sort of fund or other sort of services that's much necessary throughout Manhattan. So our office just announced $6 million to go towards neighborhood navigators. And the neighborhood navigators are essentially professionally trained individuals who will work directly with unhoused individuals who may have mental health challenges or substance abuse issues and connect them with services. Now, we know a lot of times there are folks who are making contact on the streets, but it's very difficult to navigate the different types of services that are available. These neighborhood navigators will know each sort of service that's available and can help point these people in the right direction. That same service is also going to be provided in the courts, called court-based navigators, where they will help folks who have history of recidivism or people who need to be connected to services who are in the courtroom. Instead of waiting a couple of days afterwards to connect them to services, they'll have someone there in the courtroom to connect them and make sure that they have a warm handoff directly to a social service provider. So these are two investments that the office is making to help address the recidivism we're seeing in the borough right now, and happy to leave information in the chat if anyone would like to read more or contact us further for more information. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right, next we are going to now move to the chair's report. So I am just going to say happy holidays to everyone. And in the interest of letting everybody spend more time with friends and family, I'm going to end my report there and turn it over to Will.
Thanks, Russell. I'll be equally brief. I just want to put in the chat, everybody, that we are hosting a new episode of CB8 Zooms on Friday at 3 p.m. where Assemblymember Gibbs, who's one of the newer Assembly members covering our area, is going to be interviewed by one of our board members, Lori Boris. You can sign up to be part of the Q&A in that webinar at the link on our website. And obviously the episode will be on our YouTube and you can view it at any later date as well. And so happy holidays and hope everybody has a very healthy and happy start to the new year.
All right, let's go to the committee reports and action items. We're going to start with the Transportation Committee. So let's go to Craig and Chuck.
Hi, this is Chuck Warren, and Craig, I think, is also here.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
We have three resolutions. The first resolution is one that's been talked about quite a bit. That's the 5G tower resolution. And just for everyone, we had 150 people signed on to our Transportation Committee meeting. And when you take out the board members who were there and others, it was, I'm sure, close to 130 people who were from the public who were there. unanimously opposed to this for the reasons which many of you heard. I think that the major concerns that we had, besides the health concerns, which a number of people articulated, were the fact that this whole program was supposed to be for underserved areas, as has been mentioned before. And these areas, no one could really say that they were underserved. And these are all areas where cell services is really very prevalent. And a lot of people questioned, and the committee questioned why they need 18 more towers in our area. And then there's the whole issue of the height of the towers, the siting of the towers, the way they are, the adding to more clutter on the streets, and also the situation where you're going to have these little screens and a lot of advertising in certain ways, and the whole issue of how it impacts landmark districts. And there has to be further consideration at the Landmarks Preservation Commission. And so I think that when we never really got a lot of answers to some of the questions, and really essentially it's the telecommunications companies who had spelled out where they wanted these things, and they say it's because they want to improve service in areas that are underserved, and we don't have the information necessarily to question that, and there was no information made available to us. And the city through the Office of Technology and Innovation has the contract with City Bridge, and they don't do anything except collect money. And City Bridge said they're not at this point, while they're getting revenue, they're not getting, they haven't offset their costs yet, so they say. So I think there was a lot of skepticism about that. There was a lot of information that was lacking. And I think the committee voted overwhelmingly, unanimously, 14 plus one public member against it. And I think that it was pretty clear that everyone would like to see more time before these things move forward. Craig, let me turn it over to you for remarks that you might want to make also.
Thank you, Chuck. I think you covered most of everything. I think clearly we heard pretty much a unanimous view of the community. And I do want to just call out the concerns people have, in addition to what you mentioned, the proximity issue that may exist, in that we've seen for the non-Link 5G franchise, but for the example at 520 East 90th Street, where the towers are being placed within or close to 10 feet. And in that case, it was a technicality that resulted in it being moved from its original location, which was slightly over 10 feet to slightly under 10 feet. But I think that doesn't bode well for the broader discussion in terms of where they're going to be placing potential Link 5G towers, which may similarly be extremely close. And regardless of whether people take the science that exists at face value or skeptics of it, I think there's agreement that they're imposing towers that are very close to residences, and that it's interfering with people's quality of life in whatever way they feel it is. And I think that's a serious issue that we've identified and will be commonplace all over.
And one of the things I'd like to point out is that this is not really a regulatory issue, because the Office of Technology and Innovation has a contract with City Bridge. They're in control of the contract, and they could slow things down or want more information before they give the go ahead. So we're not really talking about regulation in the standard sense here. We're talking about whether or not the city should move forward with this contract in the absence of a number of questions that have been raised by the community, and there were no answers forthcoming. And it was clear that City Bridge was not willing to provide many of the answers that people were looking for.
So just quickly before we start calling on folks, I just want to observe that we can always move to take unanimous resolutions together. Additionally, I would just say if, as we're going through here, if the commentary is sort of all one way rather than sort of belaboring point, we can just sort of move on. And then the last thing just is anytime you're raising a sort of procedural point, like a point of information or a point of order, my suggestion is to chat that fact to Will, just to make sure that you're not getting lost in the shuffle in the event that the question does get called and we're sort of moving on from debate. So with that, I will turn it back to you guys and we can take it away.
Yeah, hopefully let's see who was first here? Was Rebecca Dangor first?
That's what I was
Rebecca.
Yeah.
Was what first?
Yes, correct.
Okay, let's unmute Rebecca Dangor.
All right, I just wanted to mention a couple things because I didn't think they had been addressed by anyone else yet. During the presentation, they very clearly stated that the benefits of improving and increasing access to Wi-Fi is just a benefit and has nothing to do with where they were picking locations. So I think that kind of goes also to the question of how they're handling this semi-proposal in the first place. So one of their first slides did speak to many New York City residents who need more access to Wi-Fi, but it was kind of a moot point because they were not deciding locations based on that. I would also say, I said this at the last meeting, I have experienced bad cell service in the hospital corridor, which is where they want to place 3 of these. That being said, I think it raises even more questions that they want to place over 3 times the amount in such a concentrated area of Carnegie Hill, where I think if it was that big of a concern, we would have heard one complaint from a resident of that neighborhood about limited access to cellular data.
And to Rebecca's point, I'll just call out the fact that City Bridge made the claim that if they install towers in one location, it's supposed to help ease demand across a much broader area. So their argument was that by putting towers in whatever location it is, it will help provide additional capacity in the greater network and help out areas where there may be limited capacity, such as near the hospitals. But they did not do a good job of explaining that. And then, of course, there is the core question of why are they placing it in these areas where they're proposing it, these 18 locations.
And they never answered the question about why didn't they put anything in the Holmes Isaac area where people do have a lack of cell phone connections. That went unanswered during our long meeting. All right, next is Michelle Birnbaum. Can we unmute Michelle?
Thank you, Chuck. Yeah, I wanted to, well, I echo everything the public said because there was a lot of pushback on this during the meeting, but I did want to bring up a few things. Number one, and I had sent the press release to Will, and I think Russell saw it as well. The press release announcing this program from the mayor in July, specifically saying that these towers would only be placed north of 96th Street and in the outer boroughs. By saying north of 96th Street, I assume that meant because that's where need was determined. Same for the outer boroughs. There was absolutely no mention and a very significant omission from that press release that it was going to appear anywhere in Manhattan south of 96th Street. So I support all the comments that were made about health, of course, and the same concerns would be north of 96th Street as well. So that would have to be mitigated, but clearly they need service. But what was particularly disturbing to me during their presentation was they were so lax in being forthcoming. A simple question like, who are your providers? The response was, we really don't want to say right now. Now, you're implementing a program that requires providers. If you don't have those providers, you don't have the program. So from that, I was concerned that the two bridges I'm talking about, may not even have contracts signed. Two Bridges has a contract with the city, but it raised a question for me as to whether or not they even have contracts with the providers. Because if they did, it seems to me that legally it would certainly be appropriate for them to mention who they are, and yet they would not do that. So they were not forthcoming. Also, after all of the discussion, and it was a very, very lengthy one because there was a lot of public represented, the obvious to me came forward. We can't substantiate it, but the obvious to me is that the only reason that these are being placed in our district is for the revenue stream. Because if they put it in front of Stanley Isaacs or above 96th Street, maybe they don't feel that their advertising would generate enough income. If they put it all along Madison Avenue and capitalize on all of the commercial entities that are there and all of the crowds that those commercial entities bring, that they would be sort of hopping on their publicity to finance their effort. As far as need along a residential street like Park Avenue or Fifth Avenue north of 61st Street, the people that are strolling our streets are primarily residents, people who live here, who are going or coming from their homes and who are not complaining about access. As a matter of fact, they didn't want it and they didn't need it. So it just was very suspect and of tremendous concern to me that they weren't forthcoming about who was actually participating to this. And also, I think we should hold the mayor to his words. But we don't want it up here. We don't need it up here. And let me say one last thing. I know I'm speaking a long time. I support this resolution heartily, but for me, the word moratorium is not strong enough. I want to see this program killed. I don't want to see it. If other communities want it, that's their prerogative. But this community made their position very, very clear. A moratorium is in this resolution. And of course, I'm supporting it. The whereases are eloquently stated, but I want to see this program killed. It's nothing but selling our streets. It's a money-making proposition. Thank you very much for.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Alita, Cab, next.
Thank you, Chuck. I'd like to say a couple of things. Well, actually, a bunch of things. One is that Link NYC failed miserably at providing service to underserved neighborhoods, and that's why they're desperate to do this now. They were contracted to provide service for places like Holmes, Isaacs, and all throughout the outer boroughs and other parts of Manhattan, and they simply did not do their job. So why in the world the city would contract with them now, I can't imagine. The other thing, if you follow the money, is that cell phone providers had an auction in January of 2021. They bid over $80 billion to get the frequency rights for 5G. So that $80 billion, and my last reading was that they actually paid $70 billion for it, is that places like, or providers like AT&T, is that they now have to get their money back from someplace. So there is an image of one of these towers on, I found it earlier. I'm sure I won't be able to find it now, though, on the city site, not the city government site, but the other city site. Nope, that's not it. And that's not it either. Sorry. Yeah, I'm not finding it. There's an image of the tower. There are layers, vertical layers of different equipment that different providers could use. And I bet we all know that people in an affluent neighborhood are going to have multiple devices that they will subscribe for 5G. So they don't need to use, so they want to be in this neighborhood so that they get all of the providers who use 5G. There is something, the other thing is that the way that that Link NYC is getting their revenue is that, or City Bridge is getting the revenue, is that instead of, and this is what I was looking for. It's the city, and there's a picture on it, and I could put the link in the chat. There's a picture of the tower. But what it says is that instead of relying on revenue from ad sales, City Bridge is poised to see earnings from renting space inside the poles to telecom companies such as AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, which would complement their existing 5G infrastructure. So they don't even need the ad revenue that they're trying to put on the poles that will disrupt the streetscape and the cityscape and just be more visual clutter in an already very visually cluttered city. But they're getting they want the revenue from all of the people with the devices. Second of all, Rebecca Seawright's, or third of all, Rebecca Seawright's office referred to New Hampshire. What New Hampshire said was that they asked the FCC to commission an independent review of radio frequency standards instead of relying on studies by the providers themselves. They wanted a stay on public ads they're asking for public advertising to refer to the dangers of cell phone usage, and they recommended that schools disengage themselves from wireless communications with computers and laptops and iPads so that schools would go back to being wired. The dangers of this, even though they were stated by members of the public, I don't think can be overstated. The FCC or the FDA, whoever did this, was relying apparently on studies from the 1980s, long before this kind of communication device and frequencies were created. We don't know anything. They say don't even sleep with an alarm clock with a battery next to your head. So imagine what kinds of radio frequencies are being emitted by these poles 10 feet from where people are sleeping. In France, they said schools shouldn't have them at all in nursery schools and elementary schools because they impact brains. I just think that I'm not even talking about aesthetics, because the members of the public were so articulate about and eloquent about the aesthetics, and Keith Powers was, and our elected officials, and Matt Bauer. But the dangers from the radio frequency that we don't even know about seem to be so apparent and so unstudied that to have these 10 feet from schools and people's bedrooms and people's living space is just really dangerous. I simply cannot believe that these were designed for residential neighborhoods or cities as congested as New York. So I will, I think.
Thank you, Alita. I think we should
Sorry,
move
okay.
things along. I think we should move things along. We've got the picture. Rami?
Okay, so I'll try and be brief here, but there's been some grave misrepresenting of facts at this meeting so far. Chuck, I think you did a great job in the transportation committee. I did watch the video. So my first point is these health concerns that have repeatedly come up. I'm reading in the Journal of Exposure Science and Environmental Epidemiology. They did a deep dive into the health effects and all that. They analyzed 107 experimental studies investigating the cell signaling, all of everything. And they found that the reported bioeffects that these studies had claimed that they had found used low quality methods of exposure assessment and control. So that's the first point. I think that all of these health concerns are irrelevant to the issue at hand as well, because we're voting on the cell towers in our neighborhood, right? Okay, the next thing is people were talking about Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi also has nothing to do with it. This is cell service. This is totally different. Security and tracking. I don't know what device you're watching this meeting on, but sorry to say, that ship has sailed. And that ship sailed about 20 years ago. So if you're worried about China spying on you or God knows what, take precautions. Nobody's stopping you, but we live in 2022. That if you're worried about all of that, I'm sorry, but you're way behind the 8 ball on this. Okay, and now on the statements of fact here, we simply do not have enough information to agree or disagree. And Chuck, I do support the resolution, but I also don't really feel that the resolution is going to do anything. What if What if tomorrow DOI is like, okay, we don't really care what the community board thinks on this issue. They want a moratorium. How is that going to work? Not enough information. I wish that, like all of us, that City Bridge and all of these companies had been forthcoming and very transparent with us about this. And I think that's what we should be asking for. We should be asking to see everything. Who are the customers? This is public land. We have a right to know this stuff. Thank you. I'll end here.
Rami, I think actually we did ask to see it, and that's part of the reason why the resolution for the moratorium is we want to see all that information. And that was part of the big problem. Greg Morris, can we unmute Greg, who's right in the middle of this discussion?
Hi, thank you for, I'm not going to spend much time on this. I appreciate the conversation that's happening, and it is certainly fair, many of the points of view that have been shared. I think the intent that I think we need to remember is that the desired state, and again, we understand that it may not be finding its way forward in the way that it should, but I think the desired state was to try to have a city that does not have a digital divide. Again, not disputing a lot of the concerns, reactions that are sort of been part of this conversation thus far. I just want to sort of ask a question if I can, or at least point to something that's in the resolution that I am curious about. There's a specific whereas that says, there are no reported issues by residents of CB8 of cellular gaps and frequent drop calls that would justify Link 5G being installed in the proposed locations. And I guess my question is just, how do we know that exactly? Is the assumption there that because I come to a community board committee meeting and I don't express an issue, that the issue doesn't exist? Did we do any sort of analysis on that? Do we have any sort of record of it? I'm just curious about that, because that seems like a pretty bold statement, and it may be accurate, but I know, because I've been around and worked in this district, that there are absolutely cellular gaps. I'm not necessarily saying that these towers are going to solve that problem, but I'm just curious how it is true that I've worked there and I know that there are people who've expressed those gaps, and yet somehow in the whereas it says that's not something that exists. Thank you.
I think the idea, well, maybe Craig once said, but I think the idea was that in these areas where they're seeking to place them, people have said to us in testimony and otherwise that they've never experienced any cellular gaps in those areas. That doesn't mean, maybe it's not worded correctly. It doesn't mean in Community Board 8 there's no gaps, because there certainly may be gaps. And Rebecca Dangor referred to something, over in the hospital areas over far east there. And so I think, it may just be not phrased as accurately as it should be. But Craig, you want to comment?
Yeah, that was the intent, and the reason I said reported issues was really trying to speak to what we heard at the meeting from all the residents that spoke up in regards to the areas where they are being proposed. I maybe could be worded slightly differently to be a
It does say,
ambiguous, but that was, again, because the purpose of a resolution is to try to convey the feelings of the community, that those were the feelings that were represented at the meeting.
And so let me just pipe up to say that I think in the proposed locations, that phrase at the end of that whereas clause, I think does have that sort of limiting function that they're describing.
Right, that's the idea, but it may not be as clear when you look at it right away, Russell. So we could fix that up a little bit.
I would just add, if I can, and I apologize, I don't normally do this, but
that's fine.
You may assume that the proposed locations don't have issues because you're not hearing from residents that there are issues in those locations. But again, I just want to note, I don't know where it is that we've done an analysis, because, and again, I know the default setting for me when I talk might be about public housing developments where there are significant issues. putting a tower in front of the building may or may not solve that problem. But I also want to remind you that there is a extraordinary number of older adult residents of the community that exist throughout the community district. And I can tell you for certain that they may not be participants in meetings and gatherings such as this one, but they certainly have significant gaps and issues that exist in the technology access that they have. Now, again, it may be true that they're not capable of accessing the technology the way they need to, but they have certainly proposed and indicated that there are gaps in and around the locations that have been identified. So again, I just want to, just putting that out there based on my experience and my reaction to what's said. Again, I understand why you phrased it the way you did. I'm just digging into the idea of how are we analyzing that exactly? What do we really know? Thanks again.
I think you're raising very fair points. And
Yeah, but let me just, Greg, let me just make one point though on this, that no one except the telecoms, maybe them, know exactly, what that is. And they have no information that they share with anyone. And OTA does not know it. City Bridge does not know it. And we certainly obviously haven't done our own studies. So to the extent there's any information out there, it's with the telecom companies who aren't talking.
right, yeah, they basically, the message was take us at our word as opposed to giving us the facts to substantiate
Right.
that these gaps that they claim exist do exist, and gaps that we may know as a community exist in certain locations that they exist.
Yeah, not disputing where you're getting that content from and the gaps in information you're getting from these particular providers who I think we can all agree are out to some degree for their own end. I'm just simply, as someone who has worked in the community, indicating what I've heard and seen. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks. We appreciate your perspective on it. Judy Schneider. Can we unmute Judy?
I call the question.
Okay, is there a second there? Can we see a second? A second from, I see a couple seconds. Okay. Anyone against calling the question at this point? I don't see anybody. I don't see significant hands. So why don't we ask the secretaries to call a roll?
I feel like I'm taking advantage of my secretary, but point of information, that language that Greg addressed is going to be changed, correct?
Yeah, we're gonna just massage it a little bit to make it a little clearer.
Okay, so
And I'm
please
also,
raise your hand.
and just so I could, point of information as well, there is another minor wording issue in a whereas clause about the link NYC having 4G signals that emanate from it, and that is, I believe, not the case. I'm going to remove that from the whereas as well.
Okay, that's it.
So if you would like to,
Let's go to the vote. Go ahead, Rebecca.
if you would like to vote no, abstain, or not vote for cause, please raise your hand. Valerie.
I wanted to make a friendly amendment based upon public comment, Chuck.
Too late.
Seeing, oh, Greg.
Valerie, is that a yes then?
I
didn't hear you explain your vote.
Want to pass? You can pass.
No, it's okay.
Greg.
No.
Ed.
Well, I didn't want to vote. I just wanted to say that Valerie was on the screen waving and doing everything.
Ed, you're out of order. Come on, Ed. We're in the vote here. Regardless of what she was doing, we called the question.
I understand. Chuck, hey, everybody, just a little more Sanka. It's all fine.
It's not a question of Sank, it's a question of the rules. Come on.
Ed, are you voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause? Just real quickly.
Way I'm for this.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't hear his vote.
Yes, he was
He
voting
said he's
for it. He's for it.
Okay. Addison.
No.
Seeing no others, the resolution passes, and I will get you the total yes votes in a moment, but 2 people voted no.
Okay. Great. Next item 2 is 848 Madison. Craig, did you want to do that at all? Or
Sure. The brief synopsis of it, and this was a unanimous resolution, is that there is a dinner club called Maxime's that is coming into the ground level, and it went through our street life committee over numerous meetings, and there was a lot of discussion about the impacts that would result in terms of deliveries and garbage pickup and such, and how it would potentially cause issues with congestion on East 70th Street. So there was a lot of discussion between the applicant and its neighbors, and the plan that was devised, which essentially is this request to change parking from metered parking to no parking on Madison Avenue was what was result of those discussions. It would result in the loss of 4 parking spaces.
Yeah, it's about 80 feet from East 70th, corner of East 70th down to south, going south.
Right, and as I said, the neighbors of this business were very supportive of it. We heard from the Block Association, we heard from some co-ops that are around there, so there was a lot of coordination that went into this plan.
Yeah, this was a case where the neighborhood got together and really there were issues and problems and really came up with a solution that everybody agreed to. Anthony Cohen, let's unmute Anthony.
Call the question.
Okay, is there a second to that? Okay, Peggy seconds. Anyone against that? Okay, why don't we call the roll? Or the secretary. Excuse me.
Sorry about that. If you're voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause, please raise your hand. Elizabeth?
No.
Alita?
I'm changing my vote and voting no.
Seeing no others, the resolution passes 40-2.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 3 was a request for ambulance only parking change at 993 Park Avenue. And this request was on behalf of Dr. Karan Johar, who operates a pain management medical clinic where he performs surgical procedures on people and under heavy anesthetic, and he's authorized to administer, general anesthetics through a breathing tube, which is the most extreme form of that. And he gets people who come in for surgical procedures, and he wanted to have one spot for ambulance parking. And it's the committee. It was an issue of, obviously we don't like necessarily to provide parking spaces for doctors' offices, but this was somewhere between a sort of surgical procedure of a hospital where they have these ambulatory facilities and a regular doctor's office. And in the end, we decided that one ambulance space made sense because there's a lot of patients who come in severe pain and then are heavily sedated when they leave, and it's helpful to have ambulance come up. And there aren't that many of them, but there are a steady group of them that can use them. And so this was one thing that it was some more controversial, and 8 in favor and 3 opposed and 1 abstaining, and 1 public member also voted. So that was the let's Michelle, why don't you go ahead and unmute Michelle?
So this, I know on the face of it, seems like a very sympathetic situation, and it is in some ways. But there are many offices that function this way. And I just wanted to clarify what it means to have anesthesia, even though they're intubated, in an office outside of a hospital. When a patient has anesthesia after the surgery, they are in a recovery room. And then after they come out of the anesthesia, it is requested that they're escorted from the office. This is not to say that they are still suffering and have the anesthesia, that they are out of it, that they can't walk. It's nothing like that. They come out of the anesthesia, and for safety precautions, and rightfully so, the doctor asks that they be escorted out. That can be from a family member who walk them out the front door and hail a cab. It can be from a friend and they'll hail a Uber. And as testified by this physician, they only need the use of an ambulette maybe about 6 times a week. Now, this practice is open 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And by his own testimony, they may need an ambulette 6 days, 6 times a week. Right on that corner, just a few doors, 2 doors from the office, is a hydrant. When you have an ambulette, you call for that ambulette, and that ambulette lets you know when it arrives. And it's perfectly reasonable for the 6 times possibly per week that the patient and the escort come out the doctor's office. The ambulette is parked in the at the hydrant because it's attended, so he's not blocking the hydrant, and they use the ambulette to take that spot and put it in a residential building, and have it not being used most of the day. Remember, the request is for 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 days a week, so that even on a Sunday, even on a Saturday, the residents of that building don't have access to this spot. To me, this was very excessive. It's a sympathetic case. I realize it when you talk about physicians and doctors and surgical patients. It's not a pleasant situation. So it is very sympathetic. But in reality, if you think about it, there's no need for this. I know the doctor would like it, as many doctors and anybody, we've had apartment houses come and say, look, we have a lot of loading and unloading, and we'd like, we'd like this. I realize this is a doctor's office, is different, but it's not a necessity. Would it be a nicety for him? Yes. But I think it's a big over ask, and I urge you not to support it. I think he has solutions. Thank you.
I'd just like to make a couple points that came up in the committee that, first of all, they're asking for 1 ambulance space. That was why the majority, I think, of the committee were supportive, number one. Secondly, the hydrant is not in front of his office. It's quite a bit distance from his office, because there's his office, there's the awning for the apartment building, and then there's space going toward the hydrant. And the hydrant is on the corner, which is not close to his office. Secondly, his patients are having surgery, many of whom are having back surgery. And it's not just the question of anesthetic, but it's a question of people who have just suffered surgery and have just not necessarily going to be able to get into a cab. Some may, but a lot won't. And that's why he wanted the ambulette. And the clinic is open 7 days a week. That's why he asked for 7 days. And so I think the committee felt that he wasn't asking for that much, one space. And this was not just a regular doctor's office where you go in there and do that, or a dentist's office where you go in and have a tooth filled. This is somebody who's actually performing surgery. And if it was an ambulatory care facility of a offshoot of a hospital where they do some of the same stuff, we would certainly have said, yeah, fine. So this is sort of, I think in the view of a lot of us on the committee, it's a view that this more closely resembles that than just a regular doctor's office. So, okay, we'll go to Lita. Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to add and disagree with what you've said, Chuck, is that the hydrant is actually 1 car length away. I walk by that building pretty frequently. Is 1 car length away from the door to the office.
I don't think so.
No,
Alita, that's the wrong door. That's not the right door. It's not 1
There
car
are
length
3
away.
doors. There's a door to the south, the building entrance, and a door to the north. The door to the south, which may be where his office is 1 or 2 car lengths from the corner where there's a curb cut, because it is a corner and the hydrant is right next to the corner. It is a very small
No,
distance. And
we
there
went
is-
over. Craig, we talked about this before. Craig,
I'm just pulling it up to confirm right now. But it's definitely on the south, to the south of the awning.
It's to the south of the awning, but there's a small, narrow building and then a much larger apartment building on the corner of 83rd Street. This building is on the corner of 84th Street between 84th and 83rd, I believe. And it's not a very wide building. And even if it's to the south, it's still 2 car lengths to get to the hydrant and the corner. And the corner is right next to the hydrant. So there's a curb cut right there, which would certainly make it easy for anyone bringing someone out to access transportation, because the curb cut's right there, because
it's not just I know it's not just 2 car lengths away. Craig, we looked at this before.
But I walked by it. I just walked by it today.
Yeah,
Well,
but where?
It probably actually is closer to there's definitely at least 1 car length, 1 car before that zone would take effect. So there would be the hydrant and then 1 parking, depending on where exactly DOT put it, 1 or 2 car spaces and then space for the ambulance.
Which is exactly what I was saying. So thank you for clarifying.
Okay.
I'm done. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Rebecca Dangor.
I will pass to someone else because I see a lot of hands raised, and I know
Okay.
that Valerie had last time, so I'd want to hear from her.
Yep. Okay. Rita Popper is next, I think.
I was just going to call the question.
Oh, well, hold off. I guess people want to call a question, but Valerie wanted to say something. So let's before we call that and get a second, let's go to Valerie then, since the other Barbara wants to call a question too, I think, unless Anthony wants to. Unless Anthony, do you have something to say? Okay, he does. So let's go to Anthony Cohn.
Okay, just a couple of points here. Notwithstanding the actual distance from the door to the doctor's office to the hydrant, doesn't matter what it is. The fact of the matter is the doctor knew the situation, the parking situation, when he rented or bought the space. And he is asking for relief after the fact to somehow make his life better, easier. And 2, the need, as you described, as is described in the resolution, is so intermittent as to in fact be trivial. We have few enough spaces, parking spaces in the city right now and in our neighborhood, in our district, that the loss of even 1 space is significant. And there is a substantial difference between a doctor's office, and yes, he's performing procedures that would be performed in a ambulatory care facility directly associated with a hospital. We're going to have lots of conversations about Lenox Hill at Northwell at 70 on 3rd Avenue. But there's a substantial difference between that and a doctor's office. And I think that we're being too generous in a situation where somebody has to double park for a few minutes while someone is coming directly out of the office.
For a few minutes.
The last time I looked, double parking is a scourge of the city, and I think we've all just got to get used to it. Anyway, that was all.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Valerie.
Well, thank you. I was the abstention in the committee vote. And the question that I asked the applicant, who was very transparent, I have to say, and he said he called the DOT and they said, you know, give it a shot. And he gave it his best shot. And when I asked him,
No, they didn't. No. I mean, no, he had a letter. He's had a letter. So just to correct that, they said, you know, it could be done, but it's a quality of life issue. You have to go to the community board. That's what they said to him.
right. And he said, I thought I would give it a shot. So that's exactly what he said. So he gave it a shot. He gave it the college try. And when I asked him the question of, you know, if we do this for you, will we have to do it for every other doctor who comes forward? And I cite Anthony's point. He knew what the location was when he went in there. And I just feel I'm going from an abstention to a no, because I just don't think that this would set very good precedent for us. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, I think history shows that our committee's been very parsimonious in giving out parking spaces, giving away parking spaces. And I don't believe that giving one here, and I think that's what the committee felt, would be something that's giving it away to all doctors' offices. Most doctors' offices don't do anything like what he's doing. That's the issue. So that's why I think the majority agreed on. Sandrea.
Thank you. I just want to make a quick few comments. So when I read over the minutes and so forth, this is an orthopedic surgeon. So I don't know about anybody any of you all in this on the board and people that are listening. I have metal in my neck, so I know what it is to have to take a car service home after a procedure at a hospital. But this is actually they're not in a hospital, but we're speaking of one space. I mean, the board is going to vote how they want to vote, but the compassion in me, you're speaking of one space that's going to drop off. It probably will be drop off people too, as well as pick up. And, one space. When I had to go to the surgical center in Jersey for orthoscopic knee surgery with an orthopedic doctor, they picked me up and they brought me home. But that was a surgical center. So this is a place in the city, and we're talking about one space. One space is not going to make a major difference in the community, in my opinion, for people that are experiencing orthopedic surgery under general anesthesia. General anesthesia, like Michelle said, is serious. You're incubated and so forth, and you have to be monitored and so forth. So, and that's not for everybody. Some people probably can walk out of there. But what about the people that are really, that really need to have that curbside actual pickup or a parking space just to pick them up and go? That's all I'm saying. So I'm just pushing on a compassion. I will support it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Rami, can we unmute Rami?
Call the question.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, second. Okay, anybody object to that? Okay, let's vote. One of the secretaries, why don't you call the roll?
All right. If you would like to vote no, abstain or not.
No, it's me.
Oh,
It's
sorry,
me.
Oh, it's Andrea. Andrea's up. Okay.
I had muted myself back.
That's okay.
'Cause I didn't know what else was going to go on. So please raise your hand if you are voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause. Russell?
No.
No.
Rose?
No. I'm an
Sherry Rena?
No.
Bill?
No.
Valerie Mason?
No.
Anthony?
No.
Lindsay,
No.
Alita,
No.
Jane,
No.
Adam,
No.
Michelle,
No.
Ed,
No.
Marco,
No.
Felice,
No.
David,
No.
Craig, oh wait, sorry, Rita, I'm sorry,
No.
Craig,
Great.
I don't think Greg
oh,
is.
I'm
I don't think he
sorry,
has.
okay, I'm sorry, okay. Oops, I was, sorry about that. Okay, I'll get back to you all. I don't want to say it passed, but it's a possibility. I'll get back with the count.
Okay,
Okay.
I think we're, and, you know, barring anything from this vote, I think we are through, Russell, finally.
Good. All right. Thank you. Let's go next to the congestion pricing task force. And so we will swap out Chuck for Alita and take it away.
All right, thank you, Russell. Alita, are you on yet?
Thank you.
Okay. Would you like to?
Sure. So we had a congestion pricing task force meeting, obviously, and there was a resolution. I think that I'm sorry, I don't remember the numbers, Craig. Regarding parking, we've decided to tackle the congestion pricing issues issue by issue, month to month, and this month was parking. So there was a resolution in support of having the city do certain studies and investigations and come back with reports. And if certain metrics were met, to take action to make sure that people in the community district 8 were not going to be penalized by either higher garage prices or inability to find parking if there's congestion pricing causing an influx of cars from outside the district circling. And when I say outside the district, I'm excluding people who work here and need parking here as well, or people who have businesses here. So it would be to protect residents, local businesses, and people doing business in the community. Craig, did I miss something?
No, I think you covered most of it. There was definitely a good amount of discussion regarding the area closer to the toll zone boundary at 60th Street, and the fact that there has been noted that there are some losses in terms of the number of garages in the nearby area north of the boundary. So some of the figures that the environmental assessment had used are now outdated, which doesn't change the core facts of, I guess, the overall concerns of what the community has expressed in terms of the question of whether there are going to be more people who are potentially going to be parking in the areas north of 60th Street, which is something that the environmental assessment for congestion pricing did call out. And us as a community trying to put the pressure on MTA and New York City DOT in order to monitor it and make sure that if, as Alita said, certain metrics are met, that there's mitigation. And the resolution passed by a vote of 7 yes, 1 no, and 1 abstention.
And just to amplify what Craig was saying, the loss of garages heightens the public's concern, and also the presence of express subway stops and the Second Avenue subway also increased concern that people may be parking there. We just don't know. And so the resolution, I believe, is intended to protect from certain unintended consequences and certain fears that the public expressed. Shall we go to?
Yes, and I just want to announce before we move on, it wasn't included when the December agendas went out, but we are going to be meeting again this coming Monday. Hopefully it's not too close to the holiday, but as everyone knows, there are very few dates available for committees to actually find meeting dates. So we are going to be talking on Monday about boundary zone areas and MTA accountability and concerns regarding potential misuse of MTA funds and revenues generated by congestion pricing.
Right. If we get to that, depending on the number of comments and the strength of the comments and the timing. But why don't we go to the board? Craig, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, let's start with Michelle and then Ed and then Barbara. Okay, Michelle, hit it.
Well, just as an aside, I hope you start with the revenue situation on your next meeting, so that doesn't get left out. That's the most important. But anyway, what I want to say about this resolution and why I voted no, and I'm very sad to say that all of our congestion pricing resolutions are going to be very milquetoast, as this one is. And the reason is, I mean, there's nothing in here anybody can be against, but if you read it, do you actually think that the MTA is going to analyze the cost of parking spots in Community Board 8 and say, oh my, they've really gone up. We better go back and rethink this whole thing. It's just, I mean, I know we're trying to pass resolutions, but we're doing it because the elephant in the room is the yes or the no on whether or not we back congestion pricing. So we're going to be dancing like this for the foreseeable future, because this board is not going to be taking a stand. So for that reason, this to me was nicely worded, eloquently stated. Sure, it's everything I would love. It's a spit in the ocean and it will never happen. So it didn't go far enough, and that's why I voted against it, not to send a message to the MTA that we don't want them monitoring our parking costs, which of course they will not be, but to a message to this board to please, let's get to the essential issue of congestion pricing, and hopefully this board, especially if they're members of the congestion pricing committee or if they're attending our meetings, to somehow understand or at least be open to the concerns about congestion pricing and to feel comfortable about voting in opposition to it. I think our wonderful comprehensive resolution, we didn't have an opportunity, whether we were scared it would be either pass or we were scared it would fail, whatever the reason, it was tabled. And now we're just dancing. And so to send that message, more a message to the committee and the board than to the MTA, who's going to look at this and probably have a good chuckle, that's why I voted no.
Craig, may I just respond to Michelle, which is that we've asked for representatives of Manhattan Island on the Transit Mobility Review Board and have none. We asked for transparency with respect to that same board and have not heard anything. There is no reason to believe that even if we put no in neon letters on every Link NYC kiosk around Community District 8, that the MTA or the state would have any other reaction. So rather than debate again whether there should be congestion pricing or not, it seemed to be the logical step to look at it and be able to point to specifics and say yes or no. And the committee, and then again, the full board has had very almost, if not unanimous, reactions to specific points that may be the best way, even if it's something that they may giggle at and may amuse them over the dinner table, it is, or in the boardroom, it is still something that we are able to go to and respond on specific items. And there has been some support from other community boards. CB11 talked about their concern about parking too. So it's a question of trying to have an impact by responding to or preempting, well, that's not being right, but being proactive about specific issues that both the community and the board have raised as significant with respect to the plan.
Yeah, and if I could just add, as far as we know, we are still the only community board that has a task force or a committee that is focused on issues of congestion pricing and dealing it in this comprehensive manner that we're attempting to. And as a result, while it may be true that we may not get the outcomes that we seek, maybe our voices are going to resonate in other community boards as we get closer to potential implementation, are going to pick up on what we're doing, and maybe they're going to follow our lead, and hopefully that will build some momentum to put pressure on the agencies to actually try to address the concerns that communities have. So I think there's value to what we're doing, whether we ultimately succeed or not, but it's a matter of, do we want our voices to be heard? Do we want to be leaders on this, or do we want to just sit back and, as Alita said, pay, whether we pay for the advertising on Link NYC or Link 5G or put the message on the Empire State Building? It's not going to probably matter in that sense, but from the broader picture. But the smaller pieces, maybe people are going to try to work with communities. Maybe that's something that, in order to show that if it's implemented and they're looking to make the case that they're trying to address concerns and mitigate concerns and try to be fair and equitable, they'll be able to point to the fact, oh, maybe that Community Board 8 puts together some ideas that other communities perhaps will latch onto and try to try to address.
Exactly. Thank you. Let's move on to Ed then, and then Barbara.
Thanks, Alita. Thanks, Craig. So I'm not going to litigate the issue. I can't remember if I voted. Hey,
You
John,
abstained.
I can't remember. I voted for it before I voted against it or whatever it was. I probably, if I voted for it, it was begrudgingly, because I agree with Michelle, is that this is, I will use that language here in the community board. The MTA isn't going to do any of this. It's in the resolution. And I guess my point here is I'm a little befuddled to a degree. On the one hand, the community and the board rallied like I haven't seen in 11 years on the blood center. It was quite something. It was really terrific. And it was, to quote Jerry Seinfeld, super terrific that what they did on the districting, and to Sherry Weiner, who I see here, and great work all around for everybody rallying the community. And we have this congestion pricing now. And it's just, on the one hand, I hear it's a done deal. On the other hand, I hear it's not, and then maybe they'll be doing some things on the side. My point is, as I said at the meeting, I vehemently oppose this for a variety of reasons, which I will not bore this board and everyone else with, but that I think a lot of people have talked about. I think that we should continue to oppose this plan for a variety of fiscal and environmental and social justice reasons that are too many to say. But that's all I just wanted to say, is that I just would like to see a little more verve from the board as to opposing this bad policy, public policy. And that's all I wanted to say. And I'm sorry I went on too long, and hope to see everyone tomorrow. And if I don't see you all, have a happy holiday. Thanks.
Thank you, Ed. Barbara?
I apologize. I just want to interject and just make a quick point here, which is that it's not that we're afraid. It's not any of those things. The simple fact is that this board was presented with a resolution to do the exact thing that Michelle and Ed described, to take a position against congestion pricing. This board voted it down. That already happened. That's a fact in the past. And that's why we're where we are.
Thank you, Russell. Barbara?
So I want to commend the two of you for the position you're taking. I think you know that I have had frustrations over the time when something, instead of saying we want to see how we can make something better, we say no, and that does nothing at all. I will say that I think there's a tremendous difference about our activism with things like the blood center and redistricting. They were wrong. I think it was hard to understand a plus side. In this case, I worry about congestion, not congestion pricing. And just to quote in a different way what Ed said, I worry about the environment. I worry about the social justice, and I worry about cause. I don't think that I think most people would be for congestion pricing from what I hear, but I'm not getting into that. I do have a specific question, maybe a point of information about this. How do you monitor how much a garage is going to cost? Garage is a private organization. How do you do that? What is the mitigation? I didn't come to the meeting. I apologize. Maybe you discussed it at that point, but if you could explain how this is happening.
Yeah. I think the idea is that they can conduct surveys where they are monitoring what the prices that garages charge are for monthly rates. I think we specified in the resolution that it was, maybe we didn't talk about monthly rates, but that the intent was that whatever the rates were, that they could be monitored, and from year to year we could see whether garages are increasing their prices for customers, because that is what was specified in the environmental assessment as a mechanism for addressing demand, that if there were a lack of capacity that resulted from additional vehicles that were inundating garages in our community district, that garages could just raise their prices. And that was
what would happen from it? So what would the city do? Say, garage, you can't raise the price? Or
they would have to find a way to mitigate the loss of parking that's leading to the higher prices in the garages. The city, the EA's point seemed to be that if there is excess cars from other areas looking for parking, and that causes garages to raise their fares, that is a way of dealing with the excess parking, and so be it. The neighborhood, the people who live here and drive here, are concerned because that's not fair to tax us extra because there are these
I understand. I just didn't know the mechanism of what can you do.
I guess they would.
And we can't build new. I think one of the things I would love either congestion pricing or transportation to work on is say, when there's all these zillions of new buildings, maybe we should change the law and say there should be a parking garage associated with it.
That's something that's come up, and it's up to either zoning or transportation or the both of them to take a look at that, because that is something that arose in discussion.
I can tell you in my end of the woods, there isn't a block that isn't being knocked down and a huge building being replaced, and they're very expensive and they're going to have cars. So
true. And as Judy Schneider,
less if there's congestion pricing is my hope and my belief, whether you agree with it or not.
And as Judy Schneider pointed out, there were 2 garages in the E60s that have been or will be closed, losing hundreds of parking spaces. So that's why people have raised it as a concern. And that's what we were hoping to do, is that for us, the so be it is not a solution.
Okay.
Thank you, Barbara. Lori and then Greg.
Hi, I want to bring up a slightly different reason that I've become aware of. Until recently, they allowed what they call transients to park in there. Like, you didn't have to live in the building because they had enough spaces, you know, when people took their cars out, that they could take what they call transients, people who work in the neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera. They have since stopped doing that, and it has nothing to do with congestion pricing. It has to do with the insurance industry. The insurance that they were charged for allowing transients was like, they were looking at, I mean, I don't remember the exact figure, but it was like an increase of something like $80,000 to allow transients. So, and I know that the insurance industry is not, you know, not an independent, you know, it's not just this garage. It's like, I think all of the garages in town are probably experiencing the same thing. So I just think that you should, before we're too quick to say that, oh, it's because of congestion pricing, it's congestion pricing, it really has nothing to do with congestion pricing. They're just, they're raising it because the insurance companies are raising it if they take transients. That's number one. Number two is, last night I saw Straight Line Crazy, which is the story of Robert Moses. And it was it was just wonderful. And what I got from it was the fact that Robert Moses believed that the car was the future. And I'm here to say that the car is not the future. It's not the future of New York City. It's not the future of transportation in general. So I have always been for congestion pricing, and I remain so. That's it.
I just want to add one thing to what you said, and I'm seeing Straight Line Crazy tomorrow night and can't wait, but I'll miss everyone who's gathering tomorrow evening.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
But in terms of garages, in my building, we just learned that we are possibly going to have to address from a building perspective the fact that it's not necessarily transients, but because of the pandemic, there are fewer people who are actually using their cars on a regular basis. So there are fewer opportunities for transients to actually come in and provide revenues for buildings. So our building has had to figure out how to offset the lost revenues from the garage because we're located right by Asphalt Green, and we used to have a lot of people parking from Asphalt Green. We don't have as much capacity right now because of fewer cars that are being taken out each day. And as a result, they're going to have to increase prices there. So that's just another example of what's going on with garages. And the economics of garages are very difficult.
I have a question for Lori, which is, do you know whether the monthly rate for cars has gone up? Or because the insurance for transient shouldn't affect monthly parking unless it's a way to make up for, as Craig just pointed out, the loss of revenue from decreased transient parking.
Well, for residents, I mean, I think it's going up like $10. I think it's going up $10 a month, which is nothing. But we've had to reimburse the parking garage like $1 gazillion. I don't know exactly. My partner is the one who's on the board, so I don't know the exact figures, but they've had to reimburse the garage management for $1 gazillion because they cannot take the transients.
But that's what the concern is the monthly parking fees, not as much the daily fees for transient parking. But thank you for your comment. That's very illuminating. I had no idea insurance played a role in this. Thank you. Greg Morris, and then Michelle, if you don't mind, Chuck and Jane and Anthony have not spoken, and Peggy have not spoken on this. So let's go in that order to Greg and then Chuck and Jane.
Yep. Listen, I'll be very brief here and just say I appreciate the work of the task force. And I on the record, I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about congested pricing, but this is part of an example of something that I think I'm going to try to do more of. And that is when I see therefore it's resolved, and I really am looking closely and thinking to myself, is this something I want the MTA focused on? And or are we trying to ask for things that I don't think are sensible to ask for, and or might not even be legal to ask for, and or they're not going to do? I think I'm just going to start voting no. And I just want that to be something that's clear to this body. So a lot of thoughts and feelings, appreciate the task force, and also to other points that were made. This is the specific recommended policies to address the issues don't add up and don't make sense. And I'm not sure I want to be part of a board that's reflecting strategies and things that just don't make a lot of sense. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Chuck, and then Jane and Peggy. And thank you, Michelle.
I'd like to call a question.
Well, this is, yeah.
There's seconds.
You have multiple seconds of
There's seconds.
hands that are
Jane is
raised.
seconding.
Okay, then.
Vote for cause, please raise your hand. Greg,
No.
Paul,
No.
Joe,
No.
Marco,
No.
Elizabeth Rose,
No.
Ed,
If I voted yes the first time, I'm sorry, but I'm going to vote no for the reasons that Greg.
Lori,
No.
Lindsay,
No.
Andrea,
No.
The resolution passed.
Can we have the vote on the last transportation resolution?
Yes, it was 25 yes, 17 no. So
Thank you.
it passed.
Thank you.
Thank
For,
you.
for,
Apologies, everyone.
Wait.
for three is 24 yes and 18 no. It passed.
Thank you. Okay, so I think that's it for the congestion pricing task force. We're gonna
Can I
move
just say
next.
that
What? No, sorry. Yeah, no, we've done the item, so we're ready to move to landmarks. So let's unmute David and Jane.
Jane, it's your.
Well, we only had one application on this past Monday evening, 16 East 79th Street, a beautiful Warren and Wetmore mansion built in the very early part of the 19th century, 20th century rather. Warren and Wetmore was one of the most preeminent practices in the city, having designed Grand Central Station, among others. It was a unanimous disapproval of their wanting to change the windows, which have been changed historically over time, but the historic windows were casement windows, and they wanted to revert to 6/6 double hung aluminum clad wooden windows. We felt that the applicant should go back to the original casement windows, which were part of the Warren and Wetmore original design for this extraordinarily beautiful house on East 79th Street. It was a unanimous disapproval except for one public member who voted against the disapproval. Ed.
Oh, well,
has
now that you mentioned the public member, I was gonna call the question on the unanimous resolution, but I guess it's not unanimous, so.
Well,
you're still entitled to call the question. You're still allowed.
Say, never mind. I'll put my hand down.
Okay, Rami.
I'm confused, but call the question.
Thank you. Don't be confused. I don't know why are you confused?
No, we're seconded.
I'm taking the vote here. So if you're voting no, abstaining.
Let's just give 1 second if anybody's opposed to calling the question.
Oh, opposed calling the question.
No.
Okay. If you're voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause, please raise your hands. Addison?
No.
Elizabeth?
no.
Seeing no others, I'll have a vote count in a minute, actually, but it passes.
Thank you, Rami. I'm sorry you were confused. Thank you.
Well, we do have another resolution, not on an application, but in support of the Transportation Committee on the Link 5 towers. Our resolution is focused specifically on landmark districts. We do have a photograph of the tower, which if it could share the screen, I thought that Will or Saida would be able to put that on so that those of you who haven't seen it can see it. Well, there it is on the right, and you can see how big and bulky it is. It's modernist design. If you can just imagine that in a landmark district, 10 feet from landmark houses, some of which are no higher or are just for a little bit higher. And as was pointed out by the Transportation Committee, if you look to both the right and the left, you do have these advertising screens as well. So we thought that this would be absolutely inappropriate in a landmark district. Stylistically, it's obviously a modern design, has nothing to do with the homes and the buildings that are in landmark districts. And our resolution, in effect, is in support of the resolution by the Transportation Committee, and it also is resolved to have Landmarks Preservation Commission not approve these, and also is in support of the moratorium. So if anyone
Let me
has
just
any questions.
briefly, just to explain to, I mean, the last point that you made, David, is the reason that there are two resolutions from two committees is that this does have to be approved by the Landmarks Preservation Commission in order to move forward. And so the landmarks resolution is geared specifically for the Landmarks Commission that's looking at it, and transportation is sort of broader. So that's the reason for the two.
Correct. And the resolution is specific to what Russell just stated.
So you got some hands up. Marco was the first one that I see.
I'm sorry, Marco.
Thank you, David. I would like to call the question.
Anybody opposed? So
there's a second.
Yeah.
Second. Anybody opposed? Okay. Well, I guess we could call the roll.
Sandra.
Okay, if you raise your hand if you're voting no, not voting for cause or abstaining. Greg Morris,
No.
No.
no. I'll give you a few more minutes. Seconds, excuse me. Okay. Nobody else hands raised. It passes. 2-0.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's now move to the Parks and Waterfront Committee and Felice and Judy.
Felice, I'll take the first item. Why don't you take the second one?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, the first item we heard was for approval of a sculpture on the mall at 68th Street and Park Avenue. Let me read the resolution because it's short and I have some additional information since the meeting. We had two whereases and therefore be it resolved. Whereas providing there will be no movement of the structure once installed, and whereas the structure will be monitored by the Americas Society, which parenthetically is across the street from the sculpture. Therefore, be it resolved, Community Board 8 approves the installation of Raul Moreau's sculpture as long as there is no movement. The woman who ran the gallery and represents the sculptor who spoke earlier in the public session, Ms. Treader, I did speak with her yesterday, and she did say that there would be a minimum amount of movement. I'm not an engineer. She said 30 degrees. I don't know what that means, but she said it would be very minimal. So I don't know. The resolution as it's written obviously now no longer applies. If there's anyone that might want to make a substitute resolution, since there will be movement.
You're just talking about essentially a friendly amendment to cut the first whereas clause.
Yeah, and change the therefore be it resolved as long as there is no movement. to a minimum.
I think you can, I mean, I'll just, I think you can make that as a sort of friendly amendment here and we can have commentary on it.
Okay, do we have a second to the friendly amendment? Okay, Rebecca seconded it. Okay, now I think we can call on various people. Michelle?
Yeah, thanks. I was going to ask you if there was an update. Do we have a picture?
I did not, I don't, Will, do you have a picture from the meeting that you can put
I
up?
think it would be really helpful when we have a discussion such as this to put a picture up so that, I mean, we would be
It is
able to
online.
just see.
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
the presentation's online. Everybody
all
can
right, so
access
can
it.
I just, all right, so has everybody here seen the sculpture?
I looked at
No.
it before the meeting, but if you can just
So,
quick put it up while
well,
you,
I'll try.
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think that would be very
Okay,
helpful.
but
So
you don't need to discuss that.
let me just make my comment. So it's made of steel, it weighs 2,000 pounds, and it's kinetic. And the request was that it be made not kinetic, so that it would be still and you couldn't move it. Now, there is an argument to be made that at 2,000 pounds, it wouldn't be easy to move, but it's not the 2,000 pounds that you'd be moving, it is the kinetic part, which is also quite heavy and granted, probably wouldn't be easy to move, but it is movable. Apparently, I don't know if that 30 degrees is a modification because the artist has designed it with there it is, with the, it's the top part. I guess it's like a pendulum that moves back and forth, and probably 30 degrees was probably what it was originally designed for. And the gallerist was concerned, or the representative was concerned that without that movement that the artist might back out of the project, but that be it as it may, this is what they came up with. I had a particular concern about climbing. Others laughed at that, but I was concerned that teenagers could climb on this. If you look at it in the context of where it's placed on the mall, it takes up the whole width, whereas if a kid, a teenager, I'm not talking about little ones, they're monitored, but jumped on it and fell or whatever, they'd end up in traffic. Some of the people poo-pooed that. I don't know that it's the biggest concern in the world, but it was a concern of mine. And that's why I abstained, because we asked this question. I asked if an alarm could be put around it. The gallery is across the street, but only open like maybe 9 to 5 or 10 to 5 or whatever. So yes, they'll glance out of it, but they're not monitoring it all night, which is when such a thing could conceivably happen. And at any rate, they haven't addressed that. So in essence, they're not providing security. I think I'll just remain with my abstention, and that's the reason for my vote. Thank you.
Before I call on anyone else, Will, did you sent me the picture of the no climbing sign that they would post on the sculpture? Wasn't that you?
Yes.
Could you put that up on the screen so people could see that? Because I think that really makes a huge difference.
Sure. Give me a moment. Rebecca Dingor is next.
While Will's doing that, Rebecca, why don't you speak?
Since I see a lot of hands raised, I won't call to question, but procedurally, can I give my time to a member of the public, Barry Schneider?
No.
No, he's a public member of the committee.
But no, the answer is so we can't do that.
Russell, I don't know what the rule is. Do public members not get
No.
to speak during the
No, unfortunately, no.
Okay. Then Rita is the next person.
The number of incidences of people climbing on all the installations that we've had over the years, including the horses, is that we have nothing, and we cannot assume that kids are going to climb on this enormous structure. And I think that is something that really needs not to be considered and that I vote to approve this installation.
Okay, thank you, Rita. And if everybody will notice the sign that will be posted on the sculpture so that it will be quite clear that climbing is not something that should be done. Elizabeth, you're next.
Thanks. I guess I'm really pleased with what I think is the outcome, which is that the statute is not modified, and we are proposing to approve it, which is what I think I have heard with this amended resolution at this point. And somebody please correct me if I'm not understanding this correctly. But I'm just really disappointed that the initial reaction in committee was effectively, to ask the sculptor to modify and of fear of activity in our community. And I found that very disappointing. And I'm very hopeful that we will approve this sculpture as intended, and that we will embrace, the art that we are lucky enough to have on the Park Avenue medians throughout the year and throughout our community.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Rami, you're next.
Your understanding is correct.
Call the question.
Rami, we have two other hands up. Could you hold that while we call on both Alita and Mrs. Brown, who hasn't spoken tonight? So will you hold that?
Yeah,
Alita?
I'll hold it. Yeah.
Alita?
Thank you. As chair of the Arts Committee, co-chair, I'd like to just say that our mission is for public art in public spaces. And so I fully support this kind of sculpture, and to double down on what Elizabeth Rose said, that the sculptor not be asked to change the sculpture. And if we're really worried about people climbing on things, we ought to take a look at scaffolding, because I can't tell you how many times I see people doing pull-ups and chin-ups on scaffolding. There are trees everywhere that people are not climbing on. So while it does look appealing, maybe the nature of it as a sculpture might get across to people, but I fully support this kind of work and just ask for more of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Alita. And Mrs. Brown, and then we'll go back to Rami.
Thank you, Judy. I want to state that I support the sculpture as it is intended, and I'm offended that we would even entertain the thought of asking the artist to alter it. So I fully support the sculpture as it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Brown. Rebecca, since you already spoke, I'm going to call on Rami. Rami?
Call the question.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
There.
Anyone opposed to calling the question?
Okay, Rita seconded it. Okay, so could someone please call the roll, whoever's up next?
If you want to vote no, abstain, or not vote for cause, please raise your hands. Michelle?
Abstain.
Elizabeth Ashby?
No.
I'll give everyone else a minute. While I'm doing that, Mrs. Brown, could you unmute so we could confirm what your vote was for transportation item 3 for the record?
Reminder what the vote was.
No.
Oh, she knows. Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Okay.
I will change your vote.
Thank you.
With that being said, the resolution passes with 1 abstention and 1 no.
As revised.
Yep.
Yeah, as revised.
Thank you. Felice, are you going to do the next one?
Yes, so thank you. So the second resolution, the Manhattan Borough President reached out. They have, working with the other 4 borough presidents, a proposal to plant 1 million more trees in the city. And they are looking to have every community board in the city approve a resolution in support of this. The Million Trees effort, they're calling on the parks, the city of New York to fund it, and it's not just planting 1 million more trees, but it is also funding the maintenance and some care of the trees as well, and some training. We also had a presentation from the Nature Conservancy who explained the benefit of the urban forest agenda and what they're calling the forest for all. The goal is to get from a 22% street canopy to, I believe it was a 30% canopy cover by 2035. Having the greater canopy cover of trees in New York helps improve the city's livability, cleans the air of pollutants, reduces the impacts of climate change, and cools the city streets and buildings. One of the key elements of the proposal was to make sure that the tree canopy installation is done equitably, so that we can make sure that there is equitable coverage. There are parts of the city, they showed a map that have less of a canopy coverage that tends to be in poor communities. And so the goal is to really make sure that those communities have equitable canopy coverage. So the proposal, or I should say the resolution, is in support of the Manhattan Borough President and all borough presidents' goals to plant 1 million more to support the urban forest agenda. Are there any questions or comments? Chuck? Oh, and I should add that the resolution was approved by the committee unanimously.
I call a question.
I never even noticed you were gone, right?
Okay, we can, is there a second? There's a second from
Peggy seconded.
Okay, terrific.
Yes.
So who is taking the vote here?
Is anyone opposed to calling the question? 2 hands, so let's keep going.
No, I was just raising my hand to be unmuted. If you're voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause, please raise your hand. Seeing none, the resolution is unanimous. I believe 41 right now.
Thank you.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you both. Now let's do the Street Life Committee report, and we will turn it over to Abraham.
Russell. So for Street Life, we had 5 unanimous approvals. 4 of them were specific to Street Life, and then 1 was a joint with health, senior, and social services. So I think it would make sense to take the first 4 that are specific to Street Life together if there is a motion to take those. I see a thumbs up, but I'll call in a hand just to be democratic. Rita, I see your hand.
Well, the question on the first 4, unanimous.
Thank you very much. Okay, I see several thumbs up. Is anyone opposed to taking all of these together or calling a question on those? Cool.
No hands.
Head shaking no. So then I will go to the respective secretary on the first 4 Street Life specific 1A, 1B, 1C, and 2A.
Sandra.
Okay, please raise your hand if you are voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause. Few more seconds. I don't see any hands. Okay, it passes unanimous. Thank you.
Great. So then item 3, we had a discussion of the upcoming cannabis legislation, licensing and regulations. While we didn't take any particular action on the regulations themselves, we did want to have a resolution speaking to the fact that as a community and a community board, we're very concerned with the rise and prevalence of the smoke shops and a lot of the illegal sale of marijuana in anticipation of the licensing. And the resolution was to call on the state of New York and or the city to immediately identify and empower an agency to oversee and enforce and shut down establishments that are operating illegally. So that was the resolution. Barbara, I will call on you.
Yeah, and I'm not sure about this, but I would think I would like a friendly resolution instead of saying the agency to say the sheriff's, the New York City Sheriff's Office. The reason I'm saying it is the news as of yesterday and so on has been that Gail Brewer has had a town hall yesterday, and she's calling for the sheriff to be the one. They had the same concerns we did. I was very pleased that we expressed the same thing that she started expressing now, to say there's nobody that really is in charge of it now. There's nobody that will close down the illegal shops now. And she's calling for it. So I'm wondering if Mohit or Russell or you or somebody else has disagreements with me. I certainly would listen to it, but that would be a suggestion I would make as a friendly amendment.
I do, but yeah.
I know, Russell, we discussed it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sorry. So the reason I don't agree with that is that I think our resolution and keeping it broader gives more flexibility to make sure that this gets done. And my concern is that if we identify specifically the sheriff and the sheriff doesn't want to do it or doesn't feel empowered to do it or whatever the case may be, that we're sort of out of luck, whereas our resolution still allows the sheriff to do it, but also opens it up for anybody to do it and allows for action both by the city and by the state, essentially independently. So, I mean, it'd be great if each of them, had their own agency to do it, and it was definitely going to get done because they're both working on it. So basically, I think it's better to cast a wider net than to be too specific in the absence of the sheriff, agreeing to take this on.
And after hearing Gail Brewer, I was worried that ours was too wide of a net sometimes is not strong enough, but I will do whatever. Abraham accepts it or doesn't accept it or whatever. It's up to you, Abraham.
No, that's great. Thank you, Russell. I'll go to Rebecca and then Cause and then Greg and then Judy. And Rita and Elizabeth.
So I agree with Russell because I think part of the problem is the sheriff kind of can and has confiscated illegal cannabis during this kind of weird time period. That being said, that office is not sufficiently staffed to address what I think the issue we're dealing with here. So I would not want to limit any type of enforcement. I think we want to encourage enforcement overall. And I think what's been happening, and I was glad that one of Liz Kruger's representatives spoke about her legislation, which we're hoping to be able to come up with a resolution to support when it's, back in session, because it didn't pass the House last time. People are just agencies are not taking initiative and are saying that they have not been told they have jurisdiction or authority for this issue. So I think what the message we're trying to send is we need everybody to step up, and lack of jurisdiction, et cetera, should not be the focus of the conversation. It should be about trying to improve this process.
Well, I guess that part of me is, since everybody is not going to do it, it has to be one person. We know from history of everything, when you say that it's DOT and parks and this one, nothing got done. It's when one agency was in charge is when it got done. And what I did want to add, and thank you, Rebecca, for reminding me, is that, and it's something that Gail Brewer is saying also, and we have to beef up the sheriff's department. But that's my opinion, and I won't say anymore. It'll be up to Abraham to choose.
No, but it was
I feel we have so many agencies. I've been reading it, and Mohit knows that I keep saying that there's so many agencies, and therefore none are doing it. And this has been the history of the city. When there's too many, none gets by, and that's why I thought of this. So I think you were bringing up the problem and not the solution, Rebecca, in my opinion. But anyway.
Okay, I will now go to Cause, then Greg, Judy, and then Elizabeth.
Call the question on the original resolution.
Okay, so I see some thumbs up. I do want to invite a little bit more conversation. So Cause, if you give me a little leeway, could I call on a couple more people?
Yeah, as long as they've got questions, not history lessons.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. So then I'll go to Greg, Judy, and Elizabeth, and Sarah, and then I will close the conversation.
I'm interested as to, thank you for the work of the committee to put this together. I think there's certainly a moment in time where we are all thinking about what cannabis licensing and regulation looks like. My question to follow up on Kaz's point, because it's not a history lesson, it's about questions, I guess would be, why is it that the first part of the whereas says concerned with safety and security, and this is about illegal sales of marijuana and edibles? Is the committee feeling as if because there's illegal sales of marijuana and edibles by unlicensed establishment that the safety and security of the neighborhood is being compromised? Or are there sort of maybe assumptions being made that because it's related to something related to cannabis, which by the way, clearly we're in a moment of time, people are thinking about how that's going to be licensed, regulated, and perhaps not happening, but I'm just curious, the conversation.
Rebecca, this is you're one of the co-chairs here in the joint item, so you can just.
Yeah, so I think I hear what your concerns are, and I'm happy to I think we can remove that. I think there might have been a disconnect in terms of basically you can't, I think where the safety and concern stemmed from was the fact that you can't use a credit card to purchase marijuana legally. And so there was a lot of discussion at the committee meeting about large, I don't know, a lot of cash being stored at these establishments, legal or illegal. So I'm happy to change that. I think you raise a very good point.
But I think there was also the discussion about, because these are illegal, unregulated establishments, we don't know the origin of the products that they're selling. Whereas with under the OCM, they're coming from regulated kind of crops, if you will, from the items being sold. So that was another issue, because we didn't want, and we were concerned about sale of these products that may be, again, tainted with something else if we don't know where the origin is coming from. So that was one of the other kind of talking points of the safety and security.
I think we can take away security from that and specify about, what is included in the substance or et cetera, regulation.
Happy to clarify that, but that was another talking point. So that's hopefully, Greg, that gives a little more context to where that came from.
Thank you.
Cool. And yes, we will happily revise that. Okay, Judy.
Yeah, to answer Greg's question, I know here in the 60s, there have been a number of smoke shops that are selling the drugs illegally. We've tried to work with the police, and they really can't do anything about it. So therefore, this resolution gives them a chance to put forth an agency that actually can do enforcement and stop the illegal sales now. I think that has to happen first. I mean, they're going on with all the new sales and how it's going to be done. But first, we have to take care of all the illegal sales that are going on now in the community, which is not good for our residents.
Thank you, Judy. Okay, I have Elizabeth and then Peggy.
I guess this is an issue that theoretically will resolve itself in a year, within the next year, as the specifics around licensing get resolved. And then it will become very clear who has a license, who doesn't. In the meantime, I really am questioning what is the harm that we are seeing. I get that it is illegal to sell marijuana currently in a retail store, but what is at the moment the real harm? The marijuana is going to get sold. The marijuana is going to be in our community. And you're asking for some agency to spend some additional resources on this particular issue. Is this the issue that I really want the city to reallocate resources towards? I would really much rather see the city allocate reallocate many more resources towards dealing with the root causes of street homelessness. So I get some concern. I don't feel, and maybe others have more evidence, I don't feel what is the real harm here that makes me want to reallocate city resources.
I hear your concern on that. I think this resolution came about after an extended, discussion that took place over 2 different committee meetings. Basically, we heard from, as I said before, Liz Kruger is trying to get a bill, legislation passed that will give a single agency jurisdiction over this issue. The problem we're having right now is actions were taken and nobody feels like they have the authority to do anything about illegal activity. So I think it's not really about reallocating resources. It's more about trying to raise the concern that this should have been addressed before anything happened.
Then let's write a
I can
resolution
answer
in support of
Elizabeth's
Liz
questions,
Kruger's
though.
bill.
Yeah, let me add. Just to
that's what
go
we
ahead.
wanted to do at the health. That's what we wanted to do at the Health, Seniors, and Social Services Committee meeting. Her representative said, just wait a couple weeks because they're changing it so that they can hopefully get it passed in the
isn't
House.
just
It was
that one
passed
thing.
through the Senate during the last session. They kind of wanted us to just be on standby to support the newest iteration of the bill. That's why we didn't take previous action.
Russell, after you, I will answer.
go ahead.
I don't think that was
Okay,
the-
so the answers to the question, additionally, I think first of all, this is, yes, an interim measure in part because we don't know when the regulatory regime and all the accompanying rules are going to be final. And so basically in the course of discussing what the ultimate regulatory regime was going to be, the immediate concern in the meantime of these illegal facilities being there with no sort of enforcement mechanism or anything was raised. And so with that sort of uncertainty about how long it's going to take to have a final system set up, that's the reason for this resolution. So I'd say that this resolution is without prejudice to that ultimately happening, and it's to address the sort of limbo period that we have before that's final. Second,
Okay, I'm
the other point, I'll just a couple other quick things. And Abraham touched on this also. The concern is about the fact that because these are unregulated and unlicensed establishments, they don't have the benefit of all the various other sort of safety and other things that are attendant with the proposed licensed cannabis selling system that is coming. And so basically that, I think, we're not calling that into question or second guessing it. It's that these things that are being sold not under that system, there are concerns about that, and we just don't know essentially what's going on with them. We don't think it's right that they're being sold. On top of that, I would say I think it's frankly unfair to the people who are going through the appropriate process and taking the time to get licensed and all of that, many of whom are doing it through various programs that are designed to enhance equity and social justice, to have these unlicensed facilities operating while these other people are waiting to be able to sell legally. And so I think there's sort of harm to them from this going on in the meantime. And I guess that's all. I think those are really the responses. Oh, sorry. The last thing I'll make is just these things are operating so flagrantly and so openly that I think the administrative burden of dealing with them, I think, would be pretty minimal. I mean, we're not talking about a lot of investigation that needs to go on. It's just things that are going on just very openly flouting the rules here.
If I'd like to start, the Health Seniors Committee first met, and we met because there's 2 different types of licenses. The licenses called the card licenses have already been given out, and then there's going to be other licenses. And we were told that there's going to be a 60-day weigh-in period where we can give a list of our wish list of we want these to be. So we're still working on that. There will be further meetings to get a list that will eventually go to the borough president, or a resolution that will go to the people to say, this is what we want. This specific one came out because there are so many illegal ones. And the reason we're worried about it is, first of all, unlike the liquor license, they do not come in front of the community board. We have no say about their signage. There is a thought that possibly they're dangerous. And what's also very important, as these other licenses come and people are spending a lot of money on these licenses, well, it's going to, they're not going to be able to succeed because they have to choose a special location. They have to come in front of us. They have to only get certain parts. And here are illegal ones that are going. So there is.
And when there are legal ones, then it becomes very easy or clear about enforcement of illegal ones.
Right. We just don't know when that's going to be.
We do not know that's the case, Elizabeth. We need to know that there's an agency. If you read the laws, there are so many agencies that are involved with so much that right now they're not doing it. The reference to Liz Kruger, she's on a state level. There will be something where she will try to collect taxes. The other thing is that legal places will be able to collect taxes where illegal won't. The legal ones will be within the next couple of weeks, a month, I don't know, ready to get started. There have already been given licenses out to a certain group of people called the CARD, C-A-U-R-D, for the CARD people, then there will be others given out. So there is reason to be concerned. I think that all through the city, I heard Gail Brewer said she has 61 illegal establishments in her district alone. So there's the reasons why people are concerned.
So so the question has been called. So and I know I spoke, but let's try and draw this discussion down here, because at this point we already have a calling of the question that's up there, and so I think we got to just kind of move on.
And I assume Abraham did not want to accept my friendly amendment, which is fine, but I assume that would be the.
The question was called to the original, I think.
To the original, yeah. Okay, so I did have one other, I did name Peggy as one other person to speak before Newhan, so I'll let her go and then we can.
I'd like to second the call to call the question.
On the original, great.
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna call the question. Is anyone opposed to calling the question on the original resolution? Okay, I'm seeing thumbs up. Okay, good. In that case, I will go to the secretary in charge.
I'm passing this to Rami because it was a joint item of a committee of which I co-chair. So Rami.
Okay, if you're voting no, abstaining, or not voting for cause, please raise your hand. Elizabeth?
No.
Greg? Greg?
No.
Paul?
No.
Valerie?
I'm just going to abstain.
Cause?
Yeah, I had a point of information. Didn't Abraham accept a minor resolution some time ago? Not on
the one from Greg, or the point that Greg raised. Yeah, to cut safety. Yes, yeah. but not Barbara's friendly amendment.
Yeah,
so
correct.
So essentially,
it was it was more of a typographical, not like a formal amendment. But yes, correct.
So are we voting on the original or
no? We're voting on that. The as amended one.
But that's not
the one. Sorry, the one with that change. The removal of the word safety, essentially.
Correct. The original with removal of safety in the first whereas, and just.
But that's not what was stated on the original. So I think we should start again based on the new resolution with the modification. So it's not the original resolution that we're voting on.
I thought that was clear to everybody. I mean, I would say if that changes anybody's view and how they're voting or any of that, let's hear from folks.
Okay.
So you're okay. I take it Kaz voted yes on this.
Okay. Myself is abstention.
Okay.
The resolution carries. I'll have a total in a moment.
All right, thank you. Okay, we are going to do quick old and new business because we still have to go into executive session here. I know I just want to recognize Sherry quickly because she had something that she wanted to say, and then we're going to go to Valerie.
On December 1st, the New York State Independent Redistricting Commission issued a new assembly redistricting map, and several people have asked me if we're planning to respond. So let me tell you, yes, because in their wisdom, even though we defeated the Upper East Side joining Queens, that's what they're proposing again for the assembly. The map calls for the 36th Assembly District, now based in Astoria, Queens, to shift westward, taking over Roosevelt Island and roughly 60 blocks between East 42nd Street and
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can we just let folks know when the meeting's going to be? And because we have to.
That's what I'm finished. People may not know what we're talking about. They want to start east of 2nd Avenue this time, going over to Queens and Roosevelt Island. We will have a meeting on this on June 26th, Voting Reform Task Force. There is a January 26th. There is a public hearing this time at Hunter College where we can all go, and I'm going to propose that Russell and I have decided, since the issues are so similar, the community board doesn't have to take any action before we testify, but at our February meeting, we will pass a resolution opposing it again based on the one we did for city council. So I just wanted to allay fears of all the people who have been contacting me that we're up and ready for the fight again, and we don't want any part of the Upper East Side. This is primarily Sutton Place to go to Queens. Thank you, Russell. That's it. January 26th, 6:30.
That's the committee. Yes. All right. Let's go to Valerie.
Thank you, Russell. I just wanted to make an announcement for those of you who are unaware. Betty Cooper Wallerstein, who is a beloved member of this community board, has been very ill, and we just wanted to send our thoughts and prayers out to her. Rebecca Seawright has been monitoring the situation, as have her friends and colleagues in her neighborhood association, members of the board. But we just wanted to let everyone know that she's really not feeling very well. And if you're interested in more information, you can contact Rebecca Seawright.
Okay. Before I call on Rami, I just having Sherry make the announcement that she made was an exception to because of the exigency of that issue. So I'm just asking that other folks not make any announcements about upcoming meetings that they're holding or anything of that nature, because I do want us to move into the next item as quickly as we can. So with that, I'm going to call on Rami.
I'll be brief. As it is our December meeting, it will be my last meeting as secretary. I'd like to thank the members of the board and the community for the pleasure to serve. Thank you.
Lori, quickly.
Hi, I'm sorry, just quickly, Sherry, what is when the district that is, because I'm on the extreme east side, how far up does it go?
The maps are public. I don't want to get into a sort of substantive discussion of this, so you'll be able to see it. Rebecca.
Judy raised her hand, but I was going to move to executive session, but I can hold if it's urgent.
Okay, Judy.
I was just going to.
You cut off, but it sounds like she was going to do the same thing, potentially.
All right, so then I stand by my motion.
Okay, Kaz, let's go briefly to Kaz, and then we'll do that.
Yeah, move to adjourn after the
No, we can't.
the executive session.
You have to, you can make that motion immediately at that time. Okay, so there's a motion to move to executive session for the next item, which I'm going to second. Is anyone opposed to doing that? Okay, so now Will is going to take us into that. So basically on Zoom, you're going to get a little notification asking you to move into the new room. For members of the public, this is essentially we are talking about a personnel matter related to the board. And so these kinds of matters are done not publicly, they're done in executive session. So this is essentially the end of the public portion of the meeting. The Zoom will still stay open, but there's not going to be anything going on. So at this point, I would just recommend that members of the public sign off. And for the rest of us, I will see you in the executive session momentarily.
Everyone should, sorry, Sai. Everyone should have a invitation to move to the other room. We need to unmute Russell. Thanks everybody for your patience. Go ahead and unmute Russell.
Thanks. Rami,
Trying to redo Cos's motion to adjourn.
is there a second? Okay, very good. Thank you very much, everybody. And again, happy holidays, and hope to see as many of you as can make it tomorrow night.